Juwan Jennings, trick play. Oh, this ball's in the air for a long time. McCaffrey's able to pull it down, and he's going in for the touchdown. Juwan Jennings with a touchdown pass.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
Trying to take the lead. Mahomes goes for it right away. Wide open. Touchdown. Valdez-Scantling.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
2nd and 9. Purdy's pass. Caught. Jennings did it. What an effort breaking tackles. Now he's thrown for a touchdown and caught another.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
2nd and 6. The Sun in trouble.
Oh, what a play.
Brings it to McCaffrey, and it gets past Edwards. High stepping and pushed out by Snead.
Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Search 365 Sports on YouTube. Brought to you by TFNB, your bank for life.
With the game on the line.
Gonna jump off sides first.
Mahomes has it. He's easily going to get the first.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
1st and goal. Mahomes flings it. It's there! Hardman! Jackpot! Kansas City!
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
All right, here we go on a Tuesday. A lot of things to get to from that lawsuit, an update on that Tennessee and lawsuit against the NCAA that might, I don't know, make sense. Also, Ross Dellinger with a very thorough article today at Yahoo Sports. Craig sent that to all of us on much to get to when it comes to college football and also the NCAA tournament. And speaking of college football, Nicole Arbach just a few minutes ago had this nugget today about, well, the news is that ESPN and the college football playoff are in agreement on a 6-year, nearly $8 billion rights extension. College football still needs to resolve the outstanding issues they have for 2026 and beyond. And there we are with the revenue distribution about how that goes down. But there were thoughts that that Fox was going to get involved. But apparently that is not the case, and ESPN will be in charge of running, not the decision-making, although some people can make a joke about that when it comes to who does decide that. But the playoff will remain, appears, on ESPN and ABC.
I just don't. I don't like, Smokey, I know that you agree with this. I'm assuming Craig does as well. I don't like the idea that one entity gets to control everything. It bothers me a lot. I'm a big fan of Teddy Roosevelt, who broke up trusts and monopolies back at the turn of the 20th century. And I don't like companies getting so big that, they're like, well, what are you going to do about it? You have to suckle at our teat for all this information and all this content. So we're going to keep getting bigger and bigger, and there's nothing you can do to stop us. And just for variety's sake, I would like, admittedly, another gigantic conglomerate to get involved. But I just think, like the NFL, look, part of the reason I think that the NFL television broadcast is so good is you have 4 entities all trying to outdo each other, right? They're all trying to make sure that they're the best at it. And college football has the same thing now with CBS and NBC and Fox, ESPN, ABC, all these, the CW, for God's sakes, all these people are involved. To me, I think you should have at least 1 or 2 more of those involved when it comes to the 12-team playoff.
I brought this up, Craig, about ESPN, and a lot of people upset it was down to the 4 teams and that they might even have an influence based on their shows or whatever. Fox has their shows, but ESPN carries the games. I have never heard, not once have I ever heard anyone pointing the finger at CBS or even ESPN's College Game Day for influencing who makes the NCAA men's basketball tournament, although there are 68 teams compared to what has been 4.
Yeah, I think they're just 2 entirely separate things. You can win your conference championship in basketball in pretty much any conference, and you make the tournament, no?
Yeah.
you might win your power conference in football and not make the tournament. So that's a pretty heavy difference right there.
Huge difference, yeah.
So that's for starters. As far as this goes, I think it's interesting. I also think it's completely unfinished, and there's not a final, period to put on this sentence. It's a lot of, this is what it looks like right now, but in a follow-up tweet by Nicole Auerbach, it says that ESPN's open to sub-licensing their games. So that's a situation where when it comes down to how this all actually works, why doesn't Fox get involved or why doesn't CBS get involved? Well, technically, I suppose that they could sub-license games based on a follow-up tweet from Nicole Auerbach. And I don't know, guys. I think, it's interesting to look at that first part of that tweet. ESPN and College Football Playoff are in agreement on a 6-year, $7.8 billion rights extension. But then what does it say after that? CFP still needs to resolve its outstanding issues. Yep. Those are kind of a few big issues, like the whole revenue distribution, and we're going to get to Ross Dellinger's article. That's a massive part of the article is the revenue distribution and the fact that the SEC and the Big Ten seem to feel like they deserve more of the football money, and it points out with the SEC in particular, they've had 40% of the participation, but they make the same amount as most every other conference makes, save the years that they get 2 teams in versus teams that get 1. But when they get 1 in, they'd make the same amount, even though over the course of time they've had nearly half the field all to themselves. So, I think this is interesting. I think it's surprising to see that more networks aren't involved, but I also feel like this is a long way from being resolved entirely. So when all is said and done, that maybe this is a bit more spread out. Maybe there is sub-licensing. I don't like it all being under the control of the ESPN umbrella because I don't trust them. I don't think that they're necessarily always doing what's right for the sport. I think they're doing what most people do and looking out for themselves and their best business interest. And I think that when it comes to the college football playoff, they want to have every piece of the pie that they can, but I think everybody, even ESPN, would probably like to have it spread out a little bit. But if you can have control of it and then still get money for it, but then leave it up to the broadcasting for other people, that would work out for you in the long run the best. So maybe that's what they're hoping for. And who knows what the conversations were like as far as the money figures being thrown around and what networks were offering what. We had an article, what was it, like a month ago? It was talking about the difficulty in trying to get more people involved. I mean, the price points weren't where they wanted them to be, if I remember correctly. And so recalling that, it's not all that surprising that not everybody's jumped into the pool because the price isn't maybe where they want it to be. So interesting that they're closing in on this, but that part about the still need to resolve its outstanding issues for 2026 and beyond, we're set the next 2 years, boys. Like, there's going to be conversations, but we know the field. We know it's 12 teams. We know the format. We know everything involved in how that's going to go other than just how it's going to look when the committee's deciding on those teams. But beyond 25, nobody knows what the hell's going on. Mm-hmm. Like, the playoff format's not set.
No, it's not, but the money's going to be there, right?
I mean, of course.
But, I get the 5-7-6-6 format. They still don't have that resolved.
They don't have that. They don't have the revenue distribution. Right. They don't have the governance or the access, as she mentions in that part of the tweet. So that's a lot of, by the way, there's this also to figure out. So, I mean, that's a headline that's pretty eye-catching, but in reality, there are so many layers to this whole thing that this is not like a boom, it's done, and let's wrap it up and move on. It's a long way from that in my mind.
Well, Bob Thompson weighed in. Seems light to me. Let's say the first 4 games next season, the 4 first-round games are like $15 million each or $60 million. Add that to year 11 of the current deal on the reported $685 million average deal, and you're at around $895 million in year 11, $935 million in year 12. Discount the $1.3 billion average in the new 6-year deal back to year 1, and you're at $1.16 billion. So an increase of only 25% appears to be coming from the last year of the stale 12-year deal to year 1 of the new deal. Maybe no other bidders, which, again, you could sub-license and do what you want with that, but that's just Bob Thompson, who kind of understands the business. We've had him many times. But is there a possibility that everybody just said, we don't want to be a part of that, and because the money, although it's there, is not maybe there? Because there were thoughts. I remember reading an article that there was the possibility that they could get $2 billion for the next college football playoff television deal. And this one here appears to be light of that, like about 65 or 70% of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's maybe the sports rights bubble is not as big and with as much room to grow as it appeared like it was last summer, even though that was starting to kind of be a period where obviously with the Pac-12's television rights issues, you could see how that was starting to wind down. There's still major leagues that are like the NBA in discussions right now on what they're going to do. So, yeah, I don't know what that means exactly. It does seem a little light, and maybe just not everybody's all in on being a part of like a couple first-round games, that if you're going to take a bite out of the apple, you want the whole thing or not just a couple of bites of it. I don't know. I don't know what is in the mind of those network execs. Maybe they're waiting for it to play out a little bit more. I don't know. I don't know what the angle is there, but it does seem like there was a lot of big talk about how crazy the numbers would be, and to hear Bob Thompson say, well, that's a little light.
Well, he actually said, what was at the beginning? He said that's about a 25% increase, not what you would think could be 75 to 100%.
Well, maybe people were just being unrealistic with 75 to 100% because they're adding a few more teams, and it's not like you're adding necessarily Alabama, Michigan in every one of those games. That's going to get 10 million viewers. You're going to get Tulane versus North Carolina, and maybe those aren't the games that you want. Because I remember in one of the articles a couple months ago, and maybe it was one of the same ones I'm referencing earlier, but I don't think everybody's just gaga over just having games to have games or just having games, period, and not minding whatsoever who are a part of those games. So, yeah, maybe the first round wasn't garnering as much interest, those extra games that you would have. Not sure. I'm sure we'll get more light shed on it. I mean, $7.8 billion, over $1 billion a year for 6 years.
$1.3 billion on average.
Pretty great. But, again, you see Andrew Marchand chiming in on it and referencing other reporters, and what is also said in his tweet. This is all pending the CFP resolving all of its outstanding issues. So, again, that's what it all comes down to. Really, the big picture is what do they do about what's going on beyond the next couple of years? Because I think if you got it locked in and then everything was set and sorted out, then maybe you'd have more players pony up to the table knowing what they're offering, right? But do you even know that the SEC is in the playoff past the next couple of years? I mean, do you think that, you figure that, but do you know that, like, when it opens up? Or do you have the big breakaway? Because that's the thing, is like, what are you bidding on? You don't even know what it looks like in 2 years. So that's maybe where some of them are coming from. That's all I can figure.
And we're going to get into that with Ross Dellinger's article in a minute.
Yeah, I would have that fear because, again, they're the ones who have this working group together. And what if at the end of it they have here's the 3 best proposals. These 2 include everyone else, and this one is just us. And then because there's no one else in that room saying, like, hey, what about the ACC and the Big 12? They'll be like, you know what? Those guys are nerds. We don't need them.
Oh, yeah, what about them? And again, we're going to have some quotes on some of what was said. Great article today by a go-to guest that we've had many times in Ross Dellinger.
And I think that's why it concerns me. I think you need to have not too many voices in the room, but voices in the room from different perspectives, in that way you can stand up. Like, look, if you were trying to pass a bill in Congress about roads, and then all the people in the room didn't think you needed to do it, and there's potholes all over the place, you wouldn't get a bill passed, would you? You need somebody in the room that says, hey, there's potholes all over these roads.
Every state.
Like, let's make sure that we fill the potholes, because potholes suck. And then somebody in that room goes, yeah, there's a pothole on my way to work. Yeah, that's good. We should fill the potholes. I didn't think about that. But if you don't, then you're just going to have people going, move on.
Kelly, in a response to Bob Thompson, Fox already receiving a cut from the recently announced streaming agreement. NBC more interested in getting the NBA contract, which is going to be huge. That only leaves CBS. CBS, of course, has the men's basketball tournament and a lot of money that's tied up in that.
Yeah, and CBS is, I mean, not all the way, but pretty much out of college football, right? I mean, is there
they have the
Big Ten? Okay,
I was thinking
of the SEC. Yeah, so they got the Big Ten. That's right. They got a slice of that, and then I think they've got some HBCU action as well, I believe. But yeah, I mean, the streaming service thing last week being announced, I wonder if that plays into it, as the texter points out, and just what that's going to look like and how that maybe changes the minds of some. And I just mentioned a few minutes ago, yeah, the NBA rights are out there. You just had the WWE rights that got wrapped up, so that's not affecting anything. Just in case anybody was saving some change to the side for those, that's now done and over with, and some of those networks are involved. So yeah, the NBA is the big darling out there right now for sports media rights. So I could see somebody focusing in on that instead. But yeah, I think the streaming part of it and that whole alliance of networks, still a lot of details to figure out of how all that's going to work and the pricing. And again, this is like the announcement that we're talking about right now. There's a lot of the actual big pieces of information that are important that we don't know anything about yet, but I could see where the streaming component comes into play, and maybe that doesn't make it as appetizing or doesn't make you want to go all in as much as you maybe would in different circumstances.
All right, so there is that, which is interesting. That came out today because today Craig sent all of us a text with this article from Ross Dellinger, who he was all over the place today, including that Tennessee versus NCAA injunction hearing, telling Yahoo Sports they've begun to explore serious change to the NCAA tournament and college football. I'm going to get to some quotes here in a moment. In the wake of the Big Ten SEC joint venture, a deep dive into the ACC Big 12 role, the future of college football playoff, inevitable expansion of March, college football money overhaul, which we just kind of discussed some of that, and modifications to Project One.
D1.
Project D1, which, of course, is the future of where everything might be when it comes to Division I, FBS, et cetera.
I really wish that big powers that be would understand that bigger is not always better. Ask any streaming entity how much money they've lost by trying to put on stuff that no one watches.
Oh, they're all dealing with it right now,
exactly.
Dude. I mean, we're about to unwind back to where we were originally.
Yeah, so, there was probably a really loud minority out there that said, hey, wouldn't it be great if I could watch every movie that was in Time Warner's catalog? Okay, but that's not everybody. Most people just want to watch new stuff, right? Or really classic old stuff, not, some deep cuts from the 1950s. That was like all those things that people didn't watch. So you have, at the NCAA tournament, as perfect and beautiful as a thing you could ever have right now. And you're trying to give it plastic surgery. Don't mess with it. Try to find ways to make that 68-team tournament even better and more accessible and more fun, but do not make it bigger. It's fine.
Try to
the
get
way
more
it is.
money from it, but don't screw up the formula.
Yes, you got make sure that you can highlight the conference tournaments better, because if you don't even really have to change that much to expand the NCAA tournament. As far as I'm concerned, it's already expanded by the fact there's a bunch of teams who don't deserve to be in that could be in by winning 4 games in a row. And win their conference tournament. That's the NCAA tournament, is where we're in that part. Rebrand it that way and sell it that way, and don't expand it because we already have it. You just don't see that we have it.
Well, for Big 12 fans, and I guess we can take that tweet piece by piece, but I guess we'll start off with the basketball portion of it. Ross, and I don't know why, it's just his sources telling him this, or just a feel that he gets, but he uses the word inevitable when it comes to the expansion of the college basketball tournament. Inevitable. Now, is that somebody planting that for a reason, and then he passes it on because we know that happens? Or is that just he sees the writing on the wall, or everybody else sees the writing on the wall, and that's automatically where you're going? I don't know, but that word was a word that stood out to me, and I'm just curious as to if it's that black and white of that, it's just inevitable that they're going to change it, because I do think that the majority of people out there would vote for it to remain as is. I mean, I know that we want more in everything, but I'm with Paul that it's not always good, and sometimes we get more and then we're like, you know what, the way we had it was actually pretty good. You see all these injuries in the NFL, and it's like everybody loves the NFL, but you know what, 16 games might have been better than 18 in the long. You know what I mean? But with this in particular, I feel like the tournament is as good as it gets as far as a sports platform goes, and just an organized structure of crowning a champion. I think it's as good as you could possibly hope for, given that you don't just have your standard, this 30 to 32 teams, and we have contracts. I mean, given just how much ground they're having to cover with so many different leagues and teams and all of that, to get the 64-plus best is a challenge unto itself. And, yeah, every once in a while there's a team that's right there on the borderline. But it's like the expanded playoff. I know everybody assumes we're going to have these arguments about, well, the 13th team, you're the 13th team, dude. I'm sorry, but you should have been 12. Like, I mean, there's got to be a line where, I'm sorry, but you're not going to have the same argument as, Florida State as far as your seeding goes. You shouldn't have lost 3 games. You'd be in the top whatever. With this basketball tournament, I feel like they try to be as inclusive as possible by also keeping it elite, but allowing for underdogs to have their moment by winning conference tournaments. And then if you don't, but you had a good enough regular season, the regular season still matters. So it's perfect. Like, it's practically as perfect as you can get, accounting for everything and every wild card that can happen.
You get a banner, you get to celebrate, you get money, and you have a chance to maybe win a bowl game or 2. Yeah.
You also can be an underdog and make the tournament out of nowhere.
Yep.
You can be the favorite to get in, and then you're in a smaller conference, you get upset, and boom, you're out, and that's the break. Sorry, but that happens sometimes, but that's what the stakes are, and that's how high the stakes are. Or you can lose your conference tournament, but because your regular season was so solid, you still get your opportunity to get into the postseason, right? So just do things the right way and win enough games, and you should be in the tournament without a problem. Now it's like, I mean, how many teams are going to be like 500 basically in this thing? And how many people care about the round of 128 or whatever it's going to be? I would need to know more. I mean, are you talking about doubling the field? Is everybody getting an invite? Or is this, a couple more play-in games? Like, how exactly would this work? But, yeah, I think it's set up great the way that it is. I don't think there needs to be a bunch more teams involved. If they add like 4 more play-in games, then that's one thing. But if you're talking about adding like another 20 teams, I just think that's so overkill. And unfortunately, Brett Yormark's one of the ones that sounds like pushing for this, because the SEC and the Big Ten are getting, in a matter of time, what they want from the college football playoff. That's a big part of Ross's article, is them feeling like, with the SEC example we gave earlier, we've had 40% of the participants, but we get the same amount of money as basically everybody else. That's not going to be the case moving forward, guys. Like, they're going to get more. The Big Ten's going to get more, and they're going to get more money, but it's a matter of how many more teams? And so those are, again, things that when you see that report by Nicole Auerbach, it's like, yeah, but nothing's done yet. That's what they're still trying to sort through. So the Big 12 and the ACC are doing that with basketball, is the idea here of, we bring the goods and the big guns basketball-wise. How can we, get the most out of this and maximize this? And Brett Yormark has a comment in there talking about how they want the best teams involved, but he doesn't know that it's always necessarily the case. Well, I don't agree with him there. I don't know what glaring omissions he feels like are not in the tournament, because, again, they account for pretty much everything. Maybe he means more Big 12 schools is the only thing that I can think of. And I think the ACC and Jim Phillips kind of had the same messaging in that article as well. So I'm not for it. I think the tournament is perfect the way that it is. But the Big 12 and the ACC were very vocal in that article about wanting or exploring the idea of an expanded basketball tournament, although what that would look like, there were no details involved there.
All right, so we have that, and that Nicole Auerbach story. Now, here are some quotes inside of Ross Dellinger's article that popped out to me, and maybe not to anybody else, but it did to me. Greg Sankey, this is Greg Sankey, insisting that whatever solutions the joint board reaches, this is the one with the Big Ten and SEC, are, one, an effort, listen to this, benefit everybody in the ecosystem. 2, not an attempt to secede from the NCAA or the college football playoff, although such decisions remain viable, some believe. Let me go through this quotes first. We can go back and look at them. Number 2. Now, this is the one. Does everyone remember the Alliance?
We all remember the Alliance.
Yes.
From Jim Phillips. And when Craig sent the article text, and Paul, you circled this, I trust Greg and Tony and what they've said. I'm not paranoid about this, that it's a sinister movement. Does Jim Phillips remember the Alliance?
Does he remember 2 months ago when Greg Sankey bent him over a table? Like, does he remember that? What? How many different times do you have to get screwed by the Big Ten and SEC to realize you're lagging, Jim? Like, how many times? How many times do you have to see this? It's ridiculous. And look, maybe he's right. Maybe he's right. But as far as I can see, especially if I'm the ACC, especially if I'm them, and I was part of the alliance and the great screw job of 2023, if I was involved in either of those two things, especially not both, I would be very wary of what these two entities cared about, what I thought about things. Not to mention that one of your biggest brands is trying to leave you right now. Or you should be afraid of everything.
Yeah, you should be looking around behind your back and wish you were a mother with eyes in the back of your head. Craig?
It's all good. George Kleofkoff said there's nothing to worry about.
Yeah.
No, I think I wouldn't I wouldn't trust the SEC or the Big Ten as far as I could throw them. I wouldn't trust them at all if I was Jim Phillips, but I think he's also probably having to politic a little bit, play nice. You can't come out and say, screw you guys, I don't believe you, because what does that do? Right now, you're still at their mercy a little bit. I mean, as far as these talks and trying to figure out what the future looks like, I know that there's like this very small segment that just feels like the break off is like inevitable, that like that's absolutely happening. There's nothing that's going to change it. I don't know about that. I don't know. I feel like there is some sort of a separation that we clearly see occurring and we talk about all the time, but like, is it full on, like completely separate? I don't know. And I think that's what they're all trying to work through right now. I do think it's an uneven playing field, but it's not one that necessarily is you're playing on different fields entirely. So I think you still have to play nice if you're Jim Phillips and you're Brett Yormark. And I think Brett Yormark pretty much had similar comments to this. But that's what they said publicly. I would hope behind the scenes Jim Phillips is saying the complete opposite, because if not, he's a fool.
All right.
Based on everything that's happened, especially to the ACC at this point. So, yeah, that's one that's going to get a lot of play, that particular quote. But I think that's just saying what you kind of have to say. I hope that's what it is, at least.
Well, here's another thought. This is, first of all, minutes before the SEC Big Ten announcement occurred, SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey reached out to Phillips, Yormark, and NCAA President Charlie Baker to alert them of the news. Oh, by the way, guys, kind of like Texas did and Oklahoma did before they were leaving the Big 12, or USC and UCLA. Okay. Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark described his initial reaction as benign, and he and Phillips both expect collaboration among the four leagues to continue.
Until the other two don't need them anymore. Like, that's the thing. You don't have a voice in the room. And look, Brett Yormark, I trust more to, if he sees...
Because he's got a guy.
If he sees the road changing a little bit, or that path changing, to get more involved than Jim Phillips, who has famously been caught flat-footed twice now. I trust him more to do something about it, but it would concern me that I don't have a voice in that room.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think that you've got to just go along with it for right now. I mean, what do you want these guys to do, though?
Yeah, you can't,
what are you going to say? Screw you, SEC, F you, Sankey. We're going to do, I mean, what are you going to do?
If they're saying that behind closed doors or to them, then they shouldn't publicly act like everything is fine.
Yeah, but this is politics, guys.
Yeah.
These are leaders that are trying to get something negotiated and done, and they're playing nice, because right now it's nice. I get what y'all are saying. I get all the history, and I'm not saying that's not what's going to happen, but I just don't know what we expect Brett Yormark or Jim Phillips to say when there's nothing to really get upset about right now, because right now even Greg Sankey is saying, as you just showed that quote, and I get it, I don't trust
everybody
him.
In the ecosystem.
Right, I get that, but I think that you also can say, okay, well, that's what's being said. We're playing along with that. We're going along as if that's the case. But behind closed doors, I would absolutely hope that Jim Phillips and Brett Yormark are also sitting there with their fingers crossed behind their backs when they're saying these things, and being well aware that they could be getting screwed over by the other two. But, you know, in public at least, we're all working together. And yes, guess what? You are working together, because if you're Brett Yormark or Jim Phillips, you're absolutely hoping that this is the case.
All right.
So you're not going to damage that if there is a chance that you can stay together the way that it is to some extent.
Well, here's to feed into what you just said. If Tony Petitti and Greg Sankey want to go into a deeper think tank with their key stakeholders, the Big Ten and the SEC, about the future of collegiate athletics, there's no pride of authorship here as long as the communication continues at the rate it's been. In other words, he's happy with what he's been told or what he's being told and being updated up until now. I really don't think This is about an opportunity for them to move in a different direction.
By the way, are they going to go do that basketball tournament with no schools from the ACC and the Big 12 and say that's no. Yeah. So what do we talk? I mean, the playoff I know is a separate entity, but I mean that's all you can say is like, look, we acknowledge that they're probably doing stuff behind the scenes and they're having their discussions, and if they want to go do something about the future of college athletics, authorship, I think is the word you were trying to pronounce there. But yeah, as long as the communication continues, then, I mean, what are you going to do about it, really? I mean, Brett Yormark, if he came out publicly and said, that's it, we need answers from you guys, what are you going to get in return? They're going to screw you, Brett, and go off on their way. So it makes no sense to be combative when there's not really a need to be at this rate, even though I understand the assumption by everybody, rightfully, is that there's a knife coming to the backs of the ACC and the Big 12 at some point, but maybe there's not. And if there's not, and you have a chance to prevent that from happening, then yeah, you're going to work together to try and do what you can, because what's best for the ACC and the Big 12? To have involvement with those other two and to be involved with those other two. So until it's clear that you can't do that, I think you're working as hard as you can to try and keep this thing as close to what it is as possibly you can be.
I think that Yormark has gained equity in believing in him. Phillips, of course, has some history of being fooled. The alliance, the first of the two or three. Bob Thompson also saying this, back to what we discussed when it comes to the college football playoff and the money. People are going to say, but they doubled the rights fees from the average of the last deal to the average of the new one. Don't fall for that. You can't compare for two reasons. The previous deal was twice as long, and the new deal has 4 more games each year, apples to oranges. So there's another note from Bob Thompson on that.
Yeah, do we have time to continue going into this?
We probably need to do this. We can go all the way up until we break before Jared Sandler, so we have to break it around 3:40 or so. So we have about 6 to 7 minutes.
Here's one interesting note I wanted to pass along in the meantime. This is from just the last few minutes, but the Pac-12 Conference Board, according to John Wildner, has given the departing 10 schools notice of a proposed leadership transition with an invitation to provide comment. We expect to provide more information following a decision in the coming days. So basically, bye-bye Kleofkoff is what's happening there. So that was a statement from the conference office, which is basically Oregon State and Washington State at this point. So I just wanted to add that, since that was just coming down the pipeline here. But the other part about Ross's article, I mean, the ACC, Big 12, and their role, we just talked about that. They're all in on trying to amplify their weight, their strength in basketball, the same way that the SEC and the Big Ten are attempting to do and will likely be successful in when it comes to the football side of things. Again, Ross used that word inevitable when it came to March expansion, so everybody can debate on whether they like that or not. I made my feelings clear that I don't think it needs to be touched, but everybody's looking for more money. How do you get more money? I guess more teams, more games, more for the networks, but I don't know if it's great for the product. The CFP money overhaul, I mean, that's something where I'm just going by Ross's bullet points here. That's the SEC, and to, I guess, similar but I guess slightly lesser extent, because they can't claim 40% of the participants like the SEC can. That's new distribution for the SEC, more money for them for the Big Ten if the playoffs go the way that they want them to work out in the future.
You're talking about with the units for the college football? Yeah, absolutely.
They deserve more money, and I don't think you can really argue that with the SEC.
If they earn it that way, you can't argue.
Right.
If you earn it that way by having more teams in, which most likely they will.
But the payout structure is something that's still being debated right now. And then there's the Project D1 thing, which gets into the whole Charlie Baker proposal, and that's part of what spawned the SEC Big Ten Alliance, because that's what it is. I know they don't want to call it that, but that is what it is. The partnership, I guess, tag team, if you want to call it something else. But that's something else that was touched on in the article, and I don't really have much to add on to that. I mean, we know that Charlie Baker proposed what he did. Some people thought it was a step forward or at least some movement positively. Many others feel like it's maybe not going to work or have apprehension about it. We know with the SEC and Big Ten, again, that's part of what they were discussing together, was their dissatisfaction, I think, with some elements of that. So that was another part of it as well, and that seems like it's got a lot of work to be done to come anywhere close to being a reality right now. So that's probably last on the list, even though that's the saving grace that you hope would would just be easy. Everybody agrees to this, and we're all on the same page, but it's just not that simple. So that Project D1 thing's got a bit more to work out, but so do all these other topics. It's just that I think those other topics are far more interesting because we're dealing with the actual tournaments and the playoffs and the teams involved and those types of things.
All right, so there's all of that, a bunch to get to. There's things I want to get to later. I was going to do this early. This was going to be one of the lead stories on Tennessee and the state against the NCAA. That's going to be pushed back. Well, there's some news there today. And also Alabama's offensive coordinator, how some of the Pac-12 schools, the ones that are leaving, how they will be a part of bowl games that might be a part of what the Pac-12 used to be a part of. But let's get to the graphic, Garrett, on the NFL Combine. Here are the schools with the most players being invited. That came down today, 321 players. Michigan with the most ever, including that incredible dominant LSU team with Joe Burrow and company. 18 players have been invited to the NFL Combine in late April. And when is that, Paul? It's in late February to Indianapolis.
A couple weeks.
Washington, 13, not a surprise. Florida State, 12. Georgia, Texas, 11. Alabama, Penn State, 10. And again, that Michigan number, the most players ever drafted in 1 year. Georgia had 15 back after 2022's, or 21, I think, their national title. 15 players. Michigan hunting that down with 18 combine invites. Not that everybody will be drafted, and perhaps others that might be undrafted or drafted even though not at the combine.
I would say all but two of them should feel good about their chances to definitely get drafted at Michigan.
Okay.
I really do. A.J. Barner is a blocking tight end.
We don't have time to get into all.
Yeah.
But you say 8 of the 18,
yeah,
and then maybe 2 or 3 that aren't combine invites that could get drafted.
Well, no, I'm talking about of the 18.
Yeah,
only 2 of them I would say would have a shot not to. Like A.J. Barner's a blocking tight end. Yeah,
that's a pretty good amount.
Maybe not.
And there might be 1 or 2 that on a pro day or whatever they do might jump into the draft because even though they weren't out the combine. I did notice this: less underclassmen have entered the NFL draft and been a part of the combine less than ever before. And I saw Mitt Winter and I also saw Jim Nagy saying that perhaps it's because of NIL.
Well, I think it
perhaps
is.
About it.
Yes, it is. Because part of the reason
I'm sorry, I was quoting.
No, I know. I'm responding to their quotes, and I think, no duh.
Yeah, no. It is absolutely because there are guys who have made that kind of impulsive decision because they needed to get whatever money they could, and they wanted it right then because of their personal situation. But now, if you can wait a year and improve your stock and still make money, you're going to do that, as opposed to potentially jumping in the league when you're not ready and then having to bounce around and do a lot of things if you want to make that your profession. So, yeah, absolutely.
You can maybe make a few $100,000 if you catch on in the late rounds and, maybe make the team or not.
Maybe
and then there's some guys that
Yep.
can clearly easily make $100,000, few $100,000 and be starters and play a lot and have that guaranteed to come back to college. So, yeah, I think that's obvious. That's what's happening here. I think it would be interesting to see, and I don't know, maybe it doesn't change that at all, but just we're on the subject of the ways that this has changed. I would love to see what are those numbers when you're looking at original teams, like the original players on their teams. I know that there's going to be a couple off everybody's list, but would Michigan still be like 12? I'm just curious about that. Not that it proves any type of a point or am I attempting to. I would just be curious because there's been so much movement of, are we going to see now where a lot of the bigger schools have more of the draft picks, not because they're the bigger schools like they used to be, but because they're the bigger schools. And now, once a guy's draft worthy at Texas State, he's now playing for Georgia. And so Georgia gets credit for a guy who played for them for 1 year versus a guy who played 3 years in San Marcos.
I can help you this. UT has 11 players invited. I think 9 of them committed originally and signed with Texas. Keelan Robinson and Mitchell are the 2 that were elsewhere that are a part of that list of 11. So that's a pretty good shot.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
That's
but
great
there's probably
retention.
some that might be 50-50 or maybe even worse.
I would think would think Michigan's is probably pretty solid as well. I think Alabama's would probably be pretty solid. But, yeah, you're probably looking at 2 to 3 guys from each of those groups potentially. But that's, again, just something I'd for entertainment purposes, I would be interested in what that would look like. But that's something that definitely over the coming years could grow and grow and grow, because that's a big chunk of players from like 5 teams or 6 teams or whatever we showed, more than seems like usual.
43, 54, 65. That's 85 players. That's 1/4 of the 321 players that are invited,
and 6
from
of
those 7 schools.
6 of those 7 are in those 2 conferences.
2 local notes because of where we are in the Waco and Central Texas area. Jared Wiley, who played at Temple High School, Texas, and then TCU, invited. And then also KT Leviston, played at Midway High School, who's at Kansas State, the offensive lineman. He also was invited, so congratulations to them and everybody that was invited earlier today.
Yeah, Gabe Hall. I mean, while we're here in the
Baylor,
Lake,
the only one. That's
local.
what happens, like you guys said in the text, when you go 3-9, right?
Yeah, but Gabe Hall has a opportunity to go make some money for himself, and good for him to get that invite. But he's really their only hope in trying to get a draft pick this year. So we'll see how he does. He's got great measurables, but all the rest of it, we'll see.
Here are the quarterbacks, if you don't mind, Paul. Tell me which one of these are original teams. Jaden Daniels.
No.
Sam Hartman.
No.
Devin Leary.
No.
Drake May.
Yes.
J.J. McCarthy.
Yes.
Joe Milton.
No.
Bo Nix.
No.
Michael Penix.
No.
Michael Pratt.
Yes.
Spencer Rattler.
No.
Austin Reed.
No.
Keaton Slovis.
No.
Jordan Travis.
No.
Caleb Williams.
No.
2 of like 15 of those quarterbacks that are not with the team they originally signed with.
Well, and that's kind of
those aren't all of them.
Going to my point a few minutes ago about the teams, and I'd be interested to know like who is originally from those teams and the retention level and all of that, because I guess if you wanted to go down to a more microscopic level, the quarterbacks is where you would look, and yeah, that's where you could really see that transfer portal effect as far as teams that have picked up transfers at the quarterback spot is a position that you could really see where there's very few guys that are still at their original schools. You say yes on Austin Reed. He started off at Western Florida, so he also was a transfer.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Okay. Just making sure.
It was, what was it, McCarthy and
Drake
May.
Yeah. All right, when we come back, baseball pitchers and catchers showing up tomorrow in Florida and Arizona. We're going to check in with Jared Sandler, who we've known since he was in diapers. A little note about his new role, too, with the Rangers, plus in the 4 o'clock hour and more. Mack Rhoades at 4:30, John McClain 5:30. We'll also have Off the Radar and the Top 5, and this is 365 Sports. Stonewood Dental in Robinson, Texas. Dr. Steve Childress is my dentist. I'm proud of that because of what he's helped me understand more and more about not just having things done to your dental work, but making sure you maintain what you have so you don't need a lot more done to your dental work. And what he's done for me, root canals, a tooth being pulled, crowns, a bridge, a retainer, all of that has been done. Dr. Steve Childress helping me play catch up from just not paying attention and being kind of silly with what I was doing with too much sugar in my mouth. I can't thank him enough. He's fantastic. He has met me late at night on a Friday because I had something, that hurt. He's also, of course, scheduled me when I needed the normal stuff like a teeth cleaning or just a checkup. Dr. Steve Childress and his staff, amazing. Stonewood Dental in Robinson, Texas.
Shop big savings during the Ram Truck Month at Allen Samuels in Waco. Ram 1500 is the most luxurious and technologically advanced Ram 1500 ever. There's a great selection on the lot and ready for immediate delivery. Ram Truck Month sales event is a winner at Allen Samuels in Waco.
Stepping into a new pair of boots is great, but stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can also add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. There are more than 150 occupational specialties to help them find the best fit for their future. See all the things your son or daughter can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
Our good friend Brad Boozer, Boozer's Jewelers here at 365 Sports. Now, Brad, people who watch and listen to our show know I'm a double-time customer for you, engagement ring and wedding band, and you guys do that great, but that's not all you do at Boozer's Jewelers.
Absolutely. And I always like to say, it's a new year. It's a great way to start the year out. Go through your old jewelry. Go through your wife's jewelry box. Go through anything you're maybe not wearing, something that's broken, something that you're not using. We do a massive amount of custom work. We can take your old jewelry, old diamonds, old watches, and we can convert it into something special for you and make a one-of-a-kind piece of jewelry. And if that's not something you're interested in, a great thing is we can turn that into cash. So we buy gold, we buy diamonds, we'll buy Rolex watches, any kind of heirloom jewelry, anything that's maybe passed down to you.
Boozer's Jewelers, where do they find you, Brad?
We're at 1025 North Valley Mills Drive, right on the corner of Lake Air Drive and Valley Mills with the big clock on the corner.
Let Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine now has 2 locations to serve you. The original on Lakeshore Drive in North 19th Street and the brand new spot in downtown Waco at 600 Franklin Avenue. If you're looking for the best in craft beers or local Texas bourbons, then the original is the place to be. And for the latest trends and online phenomenons, head downtown to the Franklin location. Either way, you're going to get the same great variety, customer service, and speedy experience. Check out both locations on their Facebook and Instagram pages, Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street, and now downtown on Franklin Avenue.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
It is still something that I have to stop myself and mention the world champion Rangers. I know a lot of the people that watch this show, college football, and we had a lot to discuss the first 45 minutes, and we will get back to it in a moment. But pitchers and catchers report, which is always a pretty big day. Florida and also the Rangers and others in Arizona. Jared Sandler, who we have seen grow up in front of our very own eyes, is now also part of the television broadcast too. Joins us on 365 Sports. Jared, what does that mean to you?
Oh, hey, Smokey. Sorry, I lost you that last second, but it's always great talking to you guys.
Yeah, it's great to have you, Craig and Paul, and with me as well. What does the opportunity to do what you're about to do on top of the radio? You got more involved in the broadcast last year, and now being a part of the television broadcast too mean to you?
Oh, man. I mean, I think I tweeted this earlier today, but whether it's radio or TV or just the fact they allow me in the ballpark for the team I grew up rooting for, it's I still have that really kind of fuzzy feeling that I had when I first started, and I grew up watching TV until it was bedtime, and then listening to Eric and his host of partners on the radio, and so I have tremendous appreciation for the history of Rangers television broadcasters and some of the great broadcasters who have come through here, including Dave Raymond, who is a Baylor dad now, as I'm sure you guys know. And he does such a great job, and I'm so fortunate that Dave's a teammate and a friend, and I'm going to work my tail off to try and provide an entertaining and fun broadcast and informative broadcast just like he does in my own way. And I'm so grateful. And again, the fact that I get to do this, it's not lost on me that, I know what it means to be a Rangers fan, and I still am one. I haven't lost that. I don't think I ever will. And I just appreciate the fact that I get to do this for the team that, it's not just the team I grew up rooting for. It's my hometown team. It's not like I'm a transplant fan or anything. This is where my family's from. And this is the team I grew up rooting for. And it's just an incredibly special opportunity.
Jared, we are pitchers and catchers time, spring training wise. Jordan Montgomery, it seems to be his best option would be to return to the Rangers at this point. Now, nothing's, signed yet, but do you think that is likely to happen, or is it just tough to get a read on because baseball free agency is a slow burn now?
Yeah, Scott Boras has really pressed the slow motion button on this with all the clients, Bellinger, Montgomery, Snell. I mean, these are his guys, and he's not quick to put pen to paper, that's for sure. I'll be honest, going into the offseason, I didn't think there was a good chance Jordan Montgomery would be back, and I still don't. I do think that arrow is pointing towards coming back with each passing day, but I still don't think it's, in my estimation, over, 50% chance. It's just tough to get a read on it. The financial situation is, it's tough to interpret, with the Bally stuff and everything. And I also think, the only thing I'd say is whether or not he returns, the biggest mistake that I've seen in the assessment of Jordan Montgomery and the Rangers is the idea or the notion that the only reason he's not a Ranger is because of the TV deal. I think the Rangers, while they love Jordan Montgomery and they will always have an affection for Jordan Montgomery with, what he did last year, and would be pumped for him to be in the rotation, I think there are baseball reasons as to why it's not a no-brainer. He's north of 30, and, if you guys remember, during the regular season, the Rangers, and they were the only team who felt this way. I think the Cardinals felt this way as well. When Jordan Montgomery got to about 70 to 80 pitches, they really felt like the stuff and the production dropped. And, for a guy that's north of 30, for whom that's the case, it's not a no-brainer to sign him to a 5-year deal for 9 figures, right? So is that a trend that's going to continue to get worse? Is it a trend he can reverse? Is it, why was that the case? Because the data was pretty stark. It wasn't just small sample size, happened over 2 starts. So, I think there are baseball reasons as to why the Rangers are contemplating, bringing him back. Obviously, if they had unlimited pocketbooks, then, it probably would be an easier decision. But they're also weighing the luxury tax component too. You sign him to a $20+ million a year deal. You're pushing closer and closer to surpassing the luxury tax threshold for 3 straight years, which, includes some significant penalties. And, the Rangers have not been a team that has, shown a willingness. And by the way, very few have, like 1 or 2 teams have just disregarded the luxury tax to that degree. And the Rangers aren't one of them. And I don't think that that's a bad thing. They have spent a lot of money. Do they want to sign Jordan Montgomery to that level of deal? I guess we'll see. Again, I still don't think it's a likelihood, but I do think it is more and more likely with each passing day that he remains on the market.
Jared, we saw Adolis Garcia signing a 2-year deal to avoid arbitration. There's been other moves along the way. What has stood out to you about how they've continued to, add on to this roster, keep this roster intact, how this has all kind of come together so far to this point? What do you think of what they've got coming back?
Yeah, I mean, they really didn't have a whole lot they needed to do from a position player standpoint. I think, and there still could be a move made. I thought there was an opportunity maybe to pursue something in the trade market with the surplus they have, be it, Justin Foscue or one of their many infielders who are blocked, or, of course, everyone looks at the outfield situation. But, with the outfield situation specifically, there was no rush, nor did there need to be a rush to trade anyone. The minute you trade depth, all of a sudden you're now begging for, that depth to return. And so, from a position player standpoint, not a surprise. Now, what are they going to do with the rotation? Because right now they've got, a solid 5 to get them to the point of the season where they start getting some of these injured arms back. But what do you have beyond that? Who's your 6, 7, and 8? You need that. And is that Jose Urena? Is it Owen White? Who are the guys who are going to provide that depth in the rotation? I wouldn't be surprised if the Rangers make another move to help their rotation. And again, Is that Jordan Montgomery? Could it be? It could be. It also could be someone who's, going to cost significantly cheaper and, someone who's maybe going to fit in the middle to the back end of the rotation. I still think there's a move to be made there. I think what they've done with the bullpen is really interesting. And I think, to me, the question is, what are you going to get from Josh Sborz and Jose Leclerc? Because if you get the guys you got in the playoffs, you now add Kirby Yates and David Robertson to the mix. That's a pretty formidable four relievers who can make up the back end of your bullpen. But I think similarly to the rotation, where the Rangers would really benefit from one of their minor league guys stepping up and showing the ability to give them 3 to 5 starts between now and the middle of the season. It would also benefit them if one of their minor league guys showed the ability to get major league hitters out from the bullpen. And the guy for me that, it could be, a big opportunity for him is Mark Church. You've also got Yeri Rodriguez, who, he's pitched sparingly in the big leagues. He hasn't really established himself. He's out of options. Has he finally put it together? They need someone who no one is expecting big things from to step up and give them big things to help build that bullpen depth.
How big of a loss would you put at Mitch Garver, considering how well he played when he was healthy last year and what he was able to give them as far as even position flexibility last year?
Yeah, I think what Mitch brought, in addition to just in general being a productive middle-of-the-order bat, is he helped develop and establish the identity that made them so dangerous as a lineup, and that is the willingness to draw a walk and take pitches and make life miserable for opposing pitchers. It's not drawing walks for walk's sake, but wearing pitchers down and fouling off tough pitches with 2 strikes and not giving in and making life easy for pitchers. And, you can get similar production from, player A, B, and C. And if player A is Mitch Garver, you could still make a case that he might be more valuable than players B and C because of the way he, works counts and the way he fits with this team and this team's identity. So I think it's a loss in that regard. Now, with that said, Mitch Garver's a good player. You're not missing out on anything, outside of the batter's box. He wasn't a threat on the bases. He did a nice job as needed behind the plate, but that's not really a strength of his. And he's the type of guy who, if you're not able to replace him, then I don't mean this disrespectfully to Mitch, but shame on you, because it's not like you're talking about Corey Seager or Marcus Semien. And I think the Rangers believe they've got a guy who can replace his production in the lineup, whether or not he breaks camp with the team or not. That's Wyatt Langford, and he'll DH some, he'll play the outfield some, whether that's, again, right away, game 1 of 162, or if it's a few weeks down the road when he gets called up. That's one reason why I don't think the Rangers felt the urgency to bring Mitch Garver back, because ultimately they want to leave that spot open for Wyatt Langford, who I think they believe can make a big difference in 2024.
Jared, Bruce Bochy has 4 World Series championship teams. Of course, we know the first one last year was with the Rangers. It's weird because he's been incredibly successful, but sometimes it's hard to win and then follow it up. It's not easy. It's not supposed to be easy. But do you feel like because he's been through this before that it could help him manage and make sure this team doesn't get caught up in some of the things that could happen when you've had success?
Yeah, remember Bruce Bochy was on the every other year plan there for a 5-year stretch. So maybe you should put your money on 2025. It is so tough to repeat. And I think, why in baseball is it tough to repeat? Maybe other than they're, different than other sports. Your hitters, yes, they are playing more in a given year in which they win the World Series than, another year in theory. Of course, if guys get hurt, then maybe that balances it out. But a lot of it's the pitching side of it. Now, with the Rangers, maybe they'll benefit from the fact that Nathan Eovaldi missed 4 to 6 weeks, whatever it was, because he didn't, get that extra month's workload and stuff like that. Maybe they'll benefit from the fact that Andrew Heaney, had some time going between the bullpen and the rotation, and same with Dane Dunning. But, that's one element to it. And obviously, it's incredibly tough to win 1 and to win 2 in 2 years even tougher. He does have the experience. He's not repeated before, but, he definitely has the winner's mentality, the understanding of what it takes to win. This is still a really tough division. I still think this is a 3-team division, much like last year, so they're not getting any breaks there, but they definitely have the talent to do it. They've got a lineup that I think could end up being better next year, or in 2024, this year, I should say, than last year. And I think the bullpen should be better. I think the big question is the rotation, and can they – you never get through a season with 5 starters and only 5 starters. You always have to tap into your depth there. But can they delay the need to do that until some of their other guys get back? And, who are the guys who are going to step up from a depth standpoint when they are forced to go beyond 5 starters, and how are those guys going to perform? I think that will be a real key for the Rangers getting through the regular season. And then, as you guys know, once you get to the playoffs, who the heck knows? The Rangers did not look like a team poised to make a deep October run the way they, barely got into the postseason and limped through the final 2 months. So you get there, anything can happen, but getting to the playoffs is incredibly difficult. Unlike the NBA, where everyone gets in these days, getting to the playoffs in Major League Baseball, like in the NFL, is a tough challenge in and of itself.
Jared, I mean this when I say this. First of all, we're incredibly proud of where you are, where you have started, and the hard work it took to get to your point of doing pregame, postgame, and then all of a sudden becoming more involved in the broadcast, and now the opportunity on TV. So happy for you. We really are. Pitchers and catchers reporting is a big deal, and having you on and seeing you succeed the way you have and will means a lot to us as well. Have a great spring, and we'll see you down the road.
Well, I appreciate Smokey and Paul and everyone over there. You guys, your support over the years has meant a lot, and I'm just excited to go to Arizona to broadcast for a team that's the defending World Series champion. First time we've ever gotten to say that, and that's going to be a whole lot of fun.
It will. We'll say it as much as we possibly can. Jared Sandler, one of the voices of the Rangers, now a part of the television broadcast too, with Dave Raymond. That's part of that Diamond Sports package, and there's a conglomerate of others that will be involved, but also still a part of Rangers Radio with Eric Nadel and Matt Hicks too.
Yeah, just a couple of thoughts on all of that. I mean, the Rangers, they did get their TV deal for this year settled.
Yeah, it was, in fact, there was another story about it earlier today or yesterday that was confirming everything they're going to be able to get.
But I think beyond next year, isn't it entirely off the table? This is kind of a one-year deal, and then they'll figure it out. But I guess my 2 thoughts are, one, what a different life it is when your team's won a championship recently, that you go into a season and it's not this immense pressure to have to win the World Series. And as a fan of a team that's now won one, who had never won one before, it's just so nice on this other side of not like thinking you'll never get to see this happen. I know Paul can't relate because he's just been so spoiled. The Red Sox have like a billion titles, but
there was a time in my life I could.
Yeah, there was a time a long time ago, and I hope to be spoiled like you, where there's like 3 or 4 of them when you had 0 for so long. But I mean, they got the one, and I never have to hear another fan talk about, well, how many World Series you got? I'm sure there will still be those that, like Astros fans, well, how many do you have compared to us? I don't care, dude. They've got one, and one is more than I thought I'd ever see after 2011. So
the Astros have 2, so they're 50% there.
They're not that far ahead by any means, but you know what I mean. You can always play the comparison game, but comparison is the thief of joy, as a wise person once said. So they got their title, and I'm over the moon about it, and it just makes me go into baseball season in such a better mood.
It's different.
About the whole entire thing. The other thing that I had thought is, what a freaking stud Wyatt Langford must be, man, because all we've heard since he got drafted was just how good he is. And I know Paul loves, he's a Florida Gator, chomp, chomp, SEC.
They produce nothing but talent.
But he's been in the minors for 1 year, already got up to AAA in like record time, and now they're talking about him basically being on the main roster here in a matter of no time in year 2 since getting drafted. So I cannot wait to watch him because there's been nothing but crazy good reviews on Wyatt Langford ever since they drafted him. So that's going to be exciting.
All right, so you have Langford coming up. You have Evan Carter, who appeared at the end of last year, who's a stud. Adolis, who had a phenomenal year in right field. And I just went blank on the very, very gifted athletic center fielder who brought them some punch. In fact, had the huge home run early on in the Astros series. Who am I missing? The center fielder for the Rangers.
Yeah, no.
Evan Carter?
No, the guy
Tavares,
yeah, who's a phenomenal defensive player, good arm too, and a little punch. But
yeah,
they have some speed in the outfield.
He had some. I think that's an area where you can definitely get better. If you're looking at that, is you can get better there. But yeah, he provided some moments, as they all did when you have a World Series run like you had there. Everybody had to step up at one point or another. But Evan Carter is a freaking. I mean, there's some people already treating him like he's been doing this for 10 years. He's got a long way to go, but based on what little you saw in the grand scheme of things last year, it's hard not to think that he's, not a star in the making as well. So they're set up pretty well. There's no doubt. Corey Seager's obviously dealing with an injury, but it's nothing all that serious. And I guess the big questions for them is getting the Jordan Montgomery thing out of the way, one way or the other, and then finalizing your rotation. But also, there's going to be that storyline for the first half of Scherzer and DeGrom. And when do they come back? If they come back, how does that all work? And how healthy can they be and stay? That'll obviously be a huge key down the line. But for right now, it's good to get a little baseball action going. But, man, that seems like a short offseason, doesn't it?
No, it does.
You just won it, and now you're already back to pitchers and catchers reporting.
I'll take the short offseason every time if you're playing up into the early part of November.
I know it's not going to be a big deal for guys like Cody Bellinger, like Jorge Soler just got signed today, Jordan Montgomery, because they're going to make, millions of dollars. But could you imagine, like, your wife going, hey, where do you think we're going to live this year? And he's going to be like,
You would hope by now.
We'll find out tomorrow.
You would hope by now he's got a place either in the Dallas area or Florida or Atlanta, whatever. Yeah, someone who doesn't have yet a place where he's going to play or not.
Oh, yeah. No, Evan Carter was dealing with that during the World Series.
Yeah.
He was living out of a hotel because the way he had gotten called up in their schedule and all that. So I would imagine we'll learn during spring training that he bought a house in, like, Richardson or Arlington somewhere. Frisco, wherever. But, yeah, that was a storyline with him. But he's another guy that is just scratching the surface. So, anyways, nice to have a little baseball.
It's great. I wanted to give it that while we're on the verge of them hitting pitchers and catchers. The one thing I miss the most about being where we are, about being a college football show, although we went to the Super Bowl, we'll go to a couple of things, is the ability to cover baseball training camp. I don't think there's anything more relaxing and fun.
I mean, in theory, we could still do that. Well, we would just be talking a lot of college football.
I mean, like Paul wants to go.
Look, I think we should do 1 week in Arizona and then fly to Florida and do a week there just so we have all the bases covered.
I could get John Blake to let us come out there for probably a 3-day weekend. I think we could get that done.
Let's do it.
All right, Garrett.
It would look. It's the easiest.
We have to get a booth though, and there's not a lot of room in that booth for a lot of cameras. But we'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out. Okay, we got to go. Mack Rhoades around the corner at 4:30. Wanted to get into the men's basketball picture from last night and also tonight. There's a couple of other college football notes to get to as well, and this is. Thank you for always being a part of what you do with us, and also hit the like and subscribe if you don't mind on 365 Sports.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
Don Humidor, your home with a 48-foot walk-in humidor with the elite cigar brands from around the world, including the #1 cigar of the year, Aging Room Cuatro Nicaragua. Plus, they have the great brands like Macanudo and Artur Fuente, Rocky Patel, Aston, and so much more. CBD, great for sore muscles, aches and pains, sleep, Vita Dreams, and anxiety, mild depression, general health and wellness. Their staff very knowledgeable on the subject. If anyone is curious about CBD, ask Carol and Ashley. Don Humidor in the Townwood Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
Waco Custom Marketplace is your hometown grocery store with a full-service butcher shop and bakery. Hi, this is David Smoak. The butcher shop can take your customized orders for seafood, pork, and poultry and custom cut your favorite steaks from bacon wrap fillets, sirloin steaks, bone-in ribeyes, boneless ribeyes, and even prime rib. Cut specifically the way you want, the thickness that you want. They're all delicious. They have Norwegian salmon, mahi-mahi, catfish fillets, sliced ham or turkey, variety of cheese and several options of sausage links, and even regular, jalapeno, or cheese snack sticks. Fresh chicken breast or whole chickens, sliced bacon, pork chops, and ground beef, marinated beef or chicken fajitas, and always large briskets and tri-tip available, plus fresh vegetables. So the great product, customer service, and tradition continues at Waco Custom Marketplace, a full-service butcher shop and bakery, open Monday through Saturday. The Bauer family, Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, or WacoCustomMarketplace.com.
This is 365 Sports. Text us at 254-339-1122. The text line is sponsored by Riverbend Liquor and Wine, with the most extensive variety of craft beer in Waco. A hidden gem on Lakeshore Drive and 19th Street.
Tonight at the Foster Pavilion, Baylor hosting Oklahoma. Here are the games tonight in the Big 12. Number 10, Iowa State. Boy, they're flowing. At Cincinnati, that game's on ESPN+. So is UCF at BYU. BYU ranked number 19. Oklahoma, number 25 at 12th ranked Baylor. Last night, in Lubbock, Texas, 79-50, and it wasn't even that close.
No, it wasn't. That was an ass-kicking. That was a total ass-kicking by Grant McCaslin and company, and what a win for Texas Tech, who's very much in the mix there at the top of the standings, and particularly with a win like that last night. That was awfully impressive, and I know that there was some hesitance, or there wasn't exactly a lot of, I guess, confidence that Kansas was going to win that game because of you had the McCullough injury that was a little bit of like that could be an issue.
Yeah, they're dinged up. Everyone's
they're dinged
got
up,
attrition.
and they've lost a couple games like that kind of. There was a thought that they would go and lose last night, but nobody was talking about that kind of a final score or that type of an outcome. And so, that was mightily impressive by the Red Raiders.
That was 2001 Nebraska-Colorado, when Colorado ran for 500 yards and beat them up and bullied them. And I'll get back to the reaction to that game in a moment. TCU beat West Virginia. Here are the standings as of through last night. Houston, Iowa State, Tech jumps to 7-4. Then you have Kansas, 7-5, and there's still 10 games, or 6 games left in the conference. Baylor and Oklahoma playing tonight, and then TCU is above 500 too at 6-5.
There's 8 games left, right?
There's 18 games, right?
Oh, I thought there was 8 games. Okay, it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
but regardless,
I think there's 18 conference games. Yeah. So there we are. I just don't know what to say about Kansas. Do you, Craig?
I think I just did.
What was an ass kicking? Was it the game or was it?
No, there's 8 conference games left. I thought you said 6. There's 8 conference games left.
There's 18 overall. Is there 20?
I guess so, because 8 conference games are left.
Okay.
So there's still a little bit of a ways to go, but I think we can.
Baylor has 8 left because they're 6-4. Not everybody.
Okay, well, not everybody. Yeah. As I'm thinking of is their schedule, but regardless, here we are getting down to the final stretch and the final few weeks here, and I don't need to be the focus. I want to hear what Paul has to say about those Kansas Jayhawks, because we hear plenty when things are going well. We know about his big trip. We kind of heard about that, but I don't know that anybody was prepared for last night.
They suck on the road right now.
They're 1-5, is that right?
They're terrible on the road, and that's not unusual for the Big 12. It's unusual for them to be this bad on the road, and this is the shallowest Kansas team that you're ever going to see. They're not deep at all. And I do think right now the thing that Bill Self has to be kicking himself for when he was building this roster in the offseason is the Arterio Morris thing. They could have gotten a player without baggage that would have definitely been there for them and providing more than what they're getting off their bench now. And obviously what they're getting from him, which is 0, because they had to kick him off the team because kid's got problems and he's got legal issues and he's got a rape charge pending and all these things that are going on with Arteria Morris. That was a huge misstep that I would not expect Bill Self at this point in his career to make. He made it, and they are paying for it right now. That thing and the fact that Nick Timberlake just had his best game last night when it didn't matter, like, that's the other thing. He was supposed to be their sixth man off the bench. He's not really been that. They don't have anything off the bench. And then when Hunter Dickinson shot that three the other night against Baylor, somehow he thought that he doesn't need to play 4 feet away from the rim and in, and he started doing all these different things.
He's not big enough to play inside.
He's gone cold since then, so they've got to get him back. They only play 2 games in the next 13 days, which for a team that's banged up like they are is really good news, but would really help them to get a win this weekend when they play again, because they are just off kilter. And Bill Self getting kicked out last night shows you how frustrated he is with everything, officiating, whatever. But I think that probably bubbled over with, I don't like the way this game's going. I don't like the way some of these games have been called.
Who would want to hang around for that? Get out of there, yeah.
But also how frustrated he's got to be with his team right now.
Yeah, it is amazing because we're just so used to them being never more than like 14-4, something like that. And, of course, right now they're in a little bit of not a free fall because they beat Baylor, remember, in that game 64-61 this past weekend.
Yeah, but there's now a couple cushion game lead there for Houston, and you got that coming up. When's Houston, Kansas, the rematch?
I don't know.
I think it's the last game of the season.
Last game of the season, yeah. So you got that coming down the pipeline. And we were talking about that earlier. That's why I keep thinking. I'm thinking back to my conversation earlier with Grayson about, we were talking about Baylor's got 8 conference games left, but as you mentioned, others have because of last night, the others have one less right now. But, I mean, you're starting to get down to the last stretch here, the last month of the season, and there's Houston on top. Iowa State's right there. Texas Tech's right there. Baylor's right there. Kansas is still in that mix, but, man, they're another, untimely loss from being in the middle of the pack with Oklahoma and TCU and hanging around with those guys. So, it's still Kansas. So you just presume that they'll not win the regular season, then they'll go win the conference tournament or something. But no, things do seem a little bit off with them right now compared to most years. And so that's one of the various interesting storylines going on right now in the league. But the Cougs have adjusted well to life in the Big 12, and they're in the driver's seat. But, man, they've got a bunch of cars that are right there on their rear at the moment.
By the way, Kansas on the road even their next game. Their next game against Oklahoma in Norman.
And then
Texas.
The most important game of the Big 12 conference season would be Texas rolling into Allen Fieldhouse and getting their just desserts for leaving if they do that right.
Which a total Texas move would be go win that game.
Yeah. They've won there before.
Yeah.
Not a lot, but they have won there before.
Yeah.
BYU, Baylor are ranked teams that they still have, plus they end Craig, you asked about Houston. That's the last game of the regular season in Houston on March the 9th. So there we are with games today and also those that we saw from last night. Here is a note about that Texas Tech-Kansas game. Happen to have a couple of them from Jeff Borzello. Kansas's 29-point loss to Tech matches the program's largest loss against a ranked opponent in the AP poll era, an unranked opponent. The other 29-point loss came in 1950 against Kentucky.
Just yesterday.
Yeah.
Just yesterday.
Also,
just happened not that long ago. Yeah, no, that's crazy. 1950.
Kansas. I mean, you're talking about the stability, the continuity, year in and year out. Very rarely have they had any kind of down. That's why they are Kansas when it comes to men's basketball. Also, this from Cedric Golden of the Austin American-Statesman. He was off by a game here. If I heard this right, Texas Tech's win over number 6 Kansas. Unranked teams in the Big 12 are 10-3. It's actually 9-3 against top 10 opponents in Big 12 play. Unranked teams in the Big 12 are 9-3 at home against teams that are ranked in the top 10 when it comes to the Big 12.
Yeah, Tech's, though, they're a borderline top 25 team.
Sure
they'll be back in there, and so, yeah, that's, I think, a product of just having a lot of teams probably moving in and out of it. But I mean, that Texas team that's top 25 caliber, and so that's an interesting note, though.
Like Texas beat Baylor, and Texas was right outside the top 25.
That's
so
how
you have
I
a little
view
bit
it.
of that. TCU's been right outside the top.
It's not like there's been a bunch
25.
of crazy upsets necessarily. It's just that there's a lot of really good teams, and that sometimes because they've been beaten up on each other, they drop out for a second. So like Tech will be back in there, and then it'll
TCU might jump back in there.
Exactly.
Texas. Here's one. Let's go back to Jeff Borzello, Paul. The other note about his tweet at the bottom, it's the fewest points Kansas has scored in a road game in the Bill Self era. Per ESPN Stats Info, Jayhawks' first 20-point loss to an unranked opponent since December of 2014. I don't know who was at Temple at the time.
Mack
If it was
Rhoades.
still John Chaney. If it was John Chaney or not, but probably gone by then. But there we go with those notes from last night's loss in Lubbock against a Grant McCaslin team that they needed that too. They had kind of slipped a little bit. In fact, I think lost 3 in a row. Like everybody in the conference seems to have at least a 3-game losing streak at some point. So there we are with some of those stats. You good with that? Any more of them?
No, look, I've heard them all. I've heard them all. Well aware of what happened
last night in Lubbock. All right, when we come back, a couple of notes when it comes to what else is going on in college athletics. Baylor's Director of Athletics, Mack Rhoades, around the corner, now a part or will be a part of the College Football Playoff Committee. Gary Patterson. Also, what's going on with now Self, Sampson, and Scott Drew being ejected in the Big 12? That and more, and this is 365 Sports. Pioneer Steel and Pipe location, the brand new one that's been open now just 14 months on the Loop, and also Highway 6 just a little bit east of I-35 in Waco. PioneerBoys.com online. Their showroom, 2,500 square foot showroom, has over 1,000 new products for you to see. And also now not just more or different products, a bunch more of what they've always had, pipe, steel, and metal. Their efficiency, the delivery time, the pickup time, and how you get what you order, because we're talking heavy-duty product, whether it's an 18-wheeler, a pickup truck, a hauler, whatever it might be. They help you with that because now they have more space to deliver load up more of what you buy as a customer. Commercial or real estate, weekend warrior, contractor, or something you do for a living. It's Pioneer Steel and Pipe since 1943 at pioneerboys.com.
Cars priced right, day and night. Average your car in Texas. Trucks built for you, red, white, and blue. Average your car in Texas. Cars that zoom with lots of room. Average your car in Texas. Count on us, a dealer to trust. Average your car in Waco, Texas.
You want to know why Stonewood Dental is so successful? Listen to what happy customers have to say.
Pleasant. It's different than any other dentist office. I really feel like they care. And it's not that you're here for 2 hours waiting on someone to take care of you. It's quick and easy, and I bring my kids, and my kids love being here too. They really love the treasure box. Staff is really nice and accommodating, real friendly. You feel more like home. It's not sterile looking. Everybody has their own personalized rooms with decorations and decor, and they'll even have a blanket for you when it's cold. I've recommended people to actually come here, and they are patients now. I really love it here. It feels like family.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB Your Bank for Life. Member FDIC.
To
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow @GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student-athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
One note today was when they had a judge listening to that deal between the state of Tennessee and the NCAA. Adam Sparks, who covers Tennessee, with an interesting note, judge asked NCAA attorney to distinguish between recruits negotiating NIL offers, not allowed by the NCAA, and recruits engaging in conversations with collectives about NIL value, which is allowed by the NCAA. The attorney struggled to explain the difference. And so that continues now, Tennessee and, of course, Virginia, and their lawsuits against the NCAA. I mean, I don't know if I could explain the difference, but that's not my job.
Yeah, I mean, really, what is the difference? I think the whole collectives and the secrecy, the shroud of negotiations is just silly. I don't think that we should be allowed in the room when recruits are talking to coaches about what they can make at a certain school, but I think it just goes to show you there's still a lot of shady business dealings going on behind the scenes, because otherwise, I mean, like, I don't know. It's a weird gray area that the NCAA has found itself when it comes to these collectives and NIL, and they don't seem to know how to really wrap their head around it and clarify exactly, you know, how everything should work. I mean, there's rules in place, but it's like that question right there. Like, what's the difference really? And the difference is there's just more people involved that don't necessarily even need to be. Like, there doesn't need to be a middleman really, but for some reason we want the middleman involved, aka the collective, because we don't want the head coach involved. And I don't know. I just feel like it would be much simpler if you have a collective that wants to handle all of the day-to-day stuff and organize the money and do all of that. There's certainly a reason to have those folks around. But this whole, you know, you can negotiate with them, but not them at this time, but not with this person present. And it's like the assistant coach having to leave the recruit meeting because the recruit was going to meet with the NIL collective. It seems so silly and so just kind of unproductive to have it set up that way. It seems like you could have something a bit more streamlined and have the schools more involved, but I know there's those who have their hesitancy about there being more involvement by the schools. So, yeah, I don't know. The whole NIL thing is just, it was such a mess to begin with. It's only remained a mess, really. I mean, it's calmed down to some extent, but as far as knowing what's what and who's doing what and if it's all above board, it's as foggy as really ever, you know why? It seems like.
Because they just jumped into it. They just said, okay, we can do this, but how can they just jumped into it? Not saying it's a bad deal. We've mentioned that before, but just the fact that they just jumped headfirst right into it without really even some of the words we used to, guardrails or whatever.
And some of these things, like you look at, you know, some of the violations, it feels like they got pulled over for going 2 miles over the limit. You know, like that, like Craig just mentioned, like, can you be in the room? Can you not be in the room? What can you do? Can you introduce them? Can you not introduce them? What can you do? Like I understand that you were trying to prevent inducements however you can, NCAA, and that's what you've always tried to do. But right now, when you paint those rules, it's like, do you know how fast you were going? And like, I thought I was going the limit. And you're like, no, you were going 72. And you're like, well, feels like like you could have probably gotten somebody going faster. I don't know. Like that's kind of how this enforcement feels to me right now, that they're just handing out tickets for every mile you got over the limit when, that could just be you're passing a truck. I mean, it's something. And again, it's a ticket you would win in court, right? If you went and you're like, I got 72 and a 70, they'd be like, well, why are you wasting our time here? Let's move on. Your ticket's off. I don't know.
Could be the time of the month, whether they're out there collecting because they know they need to hit a quota. So it also could depend on that. I've been stopped for just barely over it, and I've been stopped because I should have been stopped because I was going well above the speed limit. So, all right, waiting on Baylor's Director of Athletics, Mack Rhoades. Alabama going to promote tight ends coach Nick Sheridan to be the offensive coordinator. Man, has this been a whirlwind from the time Nick Saban announced his retirement to Kalen DeBoer to much more. And then it was Ryan Grubb. Now he's with the Seahawks back in Washington. And so Alabama had to kind of turn and pivot, and they're going to promote tight ends coach Nick Sheridan now as the offensive coordinator. And, oh, by the way, he's been a part of an offense with Kalen DeBoer when he was also an offensive coordinator at Indiana.
Yeah, and his father was on staff with Saban at one point as well. So, yeah, that's not quite what you had painted and wanted to begin with, but I did see another report, and I don't know how accurate it was because it was very much in passing. There might be co-OCs, but I don't think it's like a big splash on the other end. So, yeah, that was something that was a bit of a curveball for Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb, that whole decision, and we'll see how it works out, but plenty of reasons to kind of just wonder about Alabama just because everything's not operating smoothly as it typically would operate.
That was like a ball hitting the front windshield of a car with all that splattered since Saban's retirement announcement a few weeks back. We're now joined by Baylor Director of Athletics Mack Rhoades with Craig Smoak and Paul Catalina. I'm David Smoak on 365 Sports. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for your time. So, did Kelvin Sampson have your back?
I think so. Kelvin and I had a nice little text exchange after he had been ejected, and even after his press conference, post game press conference, and I certainly appreciate the friendship I have with him.
Is there a reason, though, while you have Scott Drew, he's ejected, then Sampson's ejected, and then last night Bill Self didn't want to watch the end of that game in Lubbock? Is this a trend? Is it like everybody's kind of blowing a gasket here?
Kind of joked with Scott that this is obviously not the first time he's been a trendsetter in college basketball. We just didn't know that it was going to be, in terms of getting ejected from the game. There's a lot of pressure, when we think about these games, and going back to what I said, I believe that the Big 12 men's basketball is the best men's basketball in the country. It is elite. There are no off games. Every game is unbelievably competitive. And, when I think about that level and just how good it is, I certainly expect, as do, our coaches, other ADs, right, everything else to match that level. And I think at the end of the day, that was my point.
Mack, this is the first year that the Big 12 has evaluated their officials. Do you expect to kind of see more of like what that reaped or how it came out once the season's over, and then maybe there can be some sort of reset and figure out, why the confusion on a lot of this stuff?
Well, I think one, again, I made the statement. I think we have some really great officials in our league, and I think like everything else in college athletics, I think the officiating piece is evolving, and accountability, and how we maybe hold them accountable, and and grade them, et cetera. I think that's just a process that we're all working through. And, I think, our officiating operation, we want it, again, at the same standard that I believe our league's at when I think about, competitiveness. And, I'm always going to support our coaches, our student athletes, and I'm going to stand up for them. And again, we need to continue to grow and be better, in that area. And, I think our commissioner, Brett Yormark, certainly wants the same. And, I think he's certainly challenging just, the officiating operation, to maybe think differently in terms of how we move forward.
Speaking of thinking differently and Brett Yormark, Mac, not sure if you had a chance to read Ross Dellinger's piece, but a lot of just interesting topics with the state of college athletics, and Yormark quoted in there, as well as Jim Phillips. And one of the topics talked about was not only the revenue sharing in the future and the college football playoff, but also the expansion of the NCAA basketball tournament. Ross used the word inevitable a couple of times when it came to the expansion of the NCAA basketball tournament. I know Yormark commented on just much the same way the SEC and the Big Ten seemingly want a bigger piece of the football pie, that the Big 12 and the ACC could feel like they want a bigger piece of the basketball pie. But just where do you stand on the tournament and possible expansion of the tournament, what that would look like? I mean, just where are we all sort of amidst these conversations right now?
Yeah, I think as you mentioned, Craig, those conversations, I think they're in the initial stages, and I think certainly more to come when we think about what the future basketball tournament looks like, and you've got CBS and TNT or TBS as partners in that Turner broadcast, and so where that lands, it'll be interesting to see. I think when you think about the Big 12 and just how competitive we are, and I think other conferences, there's certainly other conferences that feel the same way in terms of additional at-large spots. If you feel like you have to keep, and not touch all of the AQs right now, all of the automatic qualifiers, right? Then you have no other, pathway to head down than to add spots and to add, at large, spots. And so, my gut is, that's eventually gonna happen. How soon, I'm not sure. And again, those are conversations that are gonna have to be had with certainly the television partners. I think it will be really difficult to take away AQ spots, and so again, not to be repetitive, I think it's going to be really about adding out large and increasing the field from 64 to whatever that may be.
I've spoken with different members of the College Football Playoff Committee. Some have said it was an amazing thing to be a part of. Some of them said it was incredibly stressful, and some said they would never do it again. When they contacted you, did you ever think about saying no?
Not really. And I paused just because I think, quite frankly, certainly your initial reaction and emotion is one of, excitement, and you're certainly honored, to have been asked to be included. I think you think about immediately, or I did, about my current responsibilities and just, the time constraints, and, can I continue to still be, an effective leader for Baylor athletics? And, I've mentioned it before. That's where I'm blessed, with such a great staff, people, that I've been able to and fortunate to have surrounded myself with. And, when I've been, certainly part of, the Big 12 and where it's moving and the direction and, the addition or the change in membership, et cetera. And even when we think about, football oversight committee and just the national landscape in terms of where college athletics is headed. I've have a great staff that really, has filled in, and I certainly don't think we've lost a step. And so that's a long answer, but I thought about, hey, I want to make sure that if I do this, I can do it at an elite level and still do, and serve as, the Baylor, athletics director at an elite level as well. And I can't do either of those without the great staff that I have.
If Baylor's at home on a Saturday, no matter the time, does that affect where you need to be for the playoff committee meetings in Dallas, or is that always maybe Sunday morning and on?
Yeah, it's a great question, Smoak. I don't know the answer yet. We're going to have two orientation sessions coming up, one in April, one in August, and I'll meet the new members there, or the committee, and certainly learn more about how the committee operates.
Mack, do you feel it's important? And I could throw out a hypothetical, but I think you'd laugh at me and I'd know your answer. But that you have to advocate for the Big 12, for the ACC, for some of the conferences that appear to be maybe don't get as much publicity as the other two, for whatever reason that is.
I think that like everybody else. I mean, I think that actions speak louder than words, and when we think about college football, it comes down to how you perform on the field, and so. No matter the conference, right? It's your teams and how they perform and how they compete, on the national landscape that really, do the talking. And I think, particularly just wearing my Big 12 hat, we've been fortunate. We've had some teams in the 4-team, playoff. And when I think about moving forward, again, speaking, with my Big 12 hat and Baylor hat, right? I think it's going to be up to the Big 12 in terms of the 12 teams and how many can be ranked in the top 12, and if you have 2 or 3 every year, I think that will speak well in terms of how the Big 12 is respected in football.
Mack, when a coach comes to you with an idea, that doesn't mean you have to approve or agree with all of them. But when Dave Aranda, and I'm expecting that he's the one that approached you about Gary Patterson, who has a pretty heated rivalry with Baylor, joining the Baylor football staff, what was your reaction?
It was certainly one, that I listened. And I knew that, Dave had, been contemplating, somebody, outside our program that, maybe somebody that had, years of experience and had been through, a lot of battles, a lot of wars, had a lot of scars, just to be a resource and be another mind that he could rely on. And, I do think that Coach Patterson, he has an elite coaching mind and certainly has a ton of experience. One of the things that, I thought about, prior to this was just, when you think about Dave Aranda, head coach, and then also, calling the defense and, running the defense, calling the defense. There are not many that have done that. And quite frankly, the last one to do it really, really well, was Coach Patterson. And so, I think, that was certainly obvious. And then, I know that Dave and his friendship goes back, for many, many years. And, I also know, and this was prior to any of this conversation, this goes back 2 and 3 years ago that Coach Patterson has great respect for Dave Aranda and how he does it, who he is, and how he does it. And I think that, Coach Patterson is extremely genuine when he says he wants to help and be a resource for Dave. And, so he'll serve as what we call a senior consultant, and, he'll work on, opponent preparation and self-scouting of our offense and defense. And, I've had several others. Well, hey, what about game day? And what will that look like? And I think, Dave certainly, has given that a lot of thought, and I think he continues to do so. And, I think Dave in the future will speak more about that in detail.
One more thing on him. Okay, I'm sorry.
No, and I think the other thing too is just, when you think about Coach Patterson, a defensive guy, I want to be clear that Dave is going to be running Dave's defense. And I think, where Coach Patterson can be really helpful, he's an extremely creative mind and just, another set of eyes.
I mentioned a bit of rivalry, and you know all about it. You weren't here for a lot of it, but you know all about it. And, of course, TCU's had a really good record against Baylor, no matter who the coach has been. But did you discuss with Gary Patterson how many Baylor fans he needs to unblock before he arrives in Waco on Twitter?
Well, here's what I say. I mean, we certainly went into this and gave a lot of thought, right? Certainly, thought about, how would our former players that were right in the thick and heat of that rivalry, how would they react? And, I had an opportunity to visit with a couple, and they were extremely supportive. And certainly had some other conversation with some appropriate people, just thinking about, bringing Coach Patterson, on board, and they were certainly extremely supportive. So, I think Coach Patterson is a smart man, and I don't think he needs any of my counsel when it comes to his social media account.
All right, you are on the College Football Playoff Committee, or will be. Today, Nicole Arbach, Ross Dellinger, there's a lot of stories that are out there. But one of the stories that came out this afternoon was that the ESPN, it's tentative, it's not official, but somewhere in the neighborhood of nearly $8 billion over 6 years with the College Football Playoff Agreement with ESPN, based on ironing out some other things along the way. There were thoughts that this thing could get much more than that. That's a lot of money, but a higher number than that. Do you feel like that maybe that bubble of television media rights might be a fact here, that they weren't able to get as much as they first thought?
Well, I'm going to speak about it in two ways, and I'm not trying to deflect, but I know that Bill Hancock really declined any comment, and so I'm not going to speak to the CFP contract in general, but I do think that we're in this time right now, and it happened right when we think about the Pac-12, where just the TV media partners are certainly being really careful, and it feels like there's a bit of a ceiling right now, and we certainly read about some of those TV media partners and some of the layoffs they've had to endure and go through. And so I think, that's where we are as an industry. And, I'm not sure anybody can predict what that will look like in the next, 6 years, 10 years. But it certainly, I think impacted our industry, in totality here in the at least last, the last 12 months.
Baylor Director of Athletics Mack Rhoades with us on 365 Sports. There's so much going on outside of just games, but you have a game tonight, Oklahoma. The Big 12 men's basketball is a battering ram. We have mentioned that many times. How do you feel like Scott and his team have kind of managed the landmines of this conference?
Yeah, I think that, Scott has said it, a couple times. You better have a short memory in this league. And, you have a tough one like we did, in Lawrence. Man, you've got to pick yourself right off the mat and be ready to play the next one and not let it bleed into, that next one. And so, I think Scott and his staff have done a great job, navigating this entire season and a roster with, several new faces. And I think that's going to be the challenge just of coaching in general when we think about the future of college athletics and we think about, where we are today and, are you going to be able to transfer multiple times without sitting out? And so, how a coach is able to get, a team and have, a roster of new faces to come together and face the challenges of a really brutal schedule like we've had. And so I think Scott's he's done a terrific job. And I think, we haven't seen this team right now play its best basketball. And I think that's what's really exciting about this team. I think our best basketball is still ahead of us.
Last thing, the women's team had a great start. One of the last unbeaten teams. They've hit kind of again, the conference is deeper with what Kansas State, Oklahoma, who they have next, and obviously Texas got them in Waco. How has Nikki, and I haven't been able to talk to her in a couple of weeks because we were out last week in Vegas with the Super Bowl, but how has she handled some of this adversity?
Yeah, she's, for those that don't know Nikki, she is an ultimate competitor, right? Very much, like Scott and Scott like her. And so, she certainly, when you lose, it's hard and it's not a lot of fun, but, she's right back at it and trying to figure out, where our weaknesses are and how do we attack and how do we get better. And, we've had some individuals on the team right now that just haven't, for a variety of reasons, played their best basketball. And I think, when maybe one of them, is going through that period of time, you can navigate through. But when you have two or three, at the same time, that's really hard. And I think, Nikki and again, the staff have done a tremendous job, in terms of just pushing through that. That was a really, hard loss at BYU and then, found a way to come back and beat a ranked, West Virginia team. And, we'll look forward to playing, at Oklahoma, on Valentine's Day and, hopefully can get a win on the road.
All right. I brought up Gary Patterson, but Mark Scott, Weston Glazer, Kyle Siegler, the Ravens defensive coordinator's brother as a GA. Dave has not Patterson gets all the attention, but there's been a lot of others. Scott with special teams is really, really good at what he does. There's a lot of things added to what he had when everything ended last year. How do you feel like he has directed or maneuvered throughout the offseason since 3-9?
Yeah, I think that, we certainly talked about, this plan that Dave put together and certainly, presented. And, it wasn't just about putting together a plan. It was about, executing it. And I think Dave has done everything he said he was going to do. When we think about, certainly talent acquisition and retention and, what we did in terms of, keeping our roster together, keeping our verbal commits, what we've done in the transfer portal. I think he's, certainly Dave and the staff have done a tremendous job. The coaches, the on-field coaches, which we've already talked about in previous shows, but, just thinking about, the three on-field coaches who, have been a head coach or a coordinator. When you think about Jared Anderson and Cap and Spavital, Jake, and then, to add clearly an elite recruiter in Keenan Hall. And then, you mentioned, our quality control and our graduate assistants and, the 4 quality control that we added, those have all been, former accountable coaches, so, you could, possibly say that they're even overqualified. So I think Dave has executed all of that at an elite level. And, we've got to have a great off season, a great spring, and then, we've got to have a great fall, and it, needs to all translate into W's on the field.
Thank you, Mack. Appreciate your time. Great to catch up. Mack Rhoades, Baylor's Director of Athletics, with us on 365 Sports, on him being named to the College Football Playoff Committee. And there's some thoughts I was thinking about. Okay, so let's say they get locked in, right, because they have to watch all these games and all that. And does that affect perhaps if Baylor's on the East Coast or somewhere like in Utah, wherever it might be, and he's got to be in Irving or wherever that – where is the Gaylord, Paul?
Grapevine.
In Grapevine. And then, of course, the Patterson hire, which, I mean, it's a big deal. And it's also interesting. He talked to former players and others that he visited with about the Patterson hire because of the bitterness of that rivalry back in the day. And it's still there. Obviously, with just TCU now still winning that game quite a bit.
Yeah, but I think we need to provide a little bit of context. That wasn't as much Baylor versus Gary Patterson.
It was Patterson against Bryles.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah.
I mean, that was it more than anything else. There was no reason for Gary Patterson to hate Baylor outside of he hated Art Bryles and vice versa. Mm-hmm. And I know that in public he'd probably say differently, and a matter of fact did say differently. And we know, at least from the other perspective, that wasn't the case, that there was a dislike there. And it was clear on the field. It was clear the way things wrapped up. I mean, Gary Patterson's the same guy who said the program down south of here whenever TCU players were getting in trouble, and he wanted to deflect and then put the flashlight back on Baylor, who was going through their struggles, if y'all will remember that correctly. So there was a lot of bad blood, and I think there was definitely a part of him that wanted to just drive the stake in when he had the opportunity, when Baylor was on its knees, basically, and weakened by all of the changes and the scandal and everything that came with that. And he did. He put it on him pretty good. And, I don't think it really changed things in the long run because I think he probably realized as well, I don't really hate this place as much as I just hated the guy who was coaching opposite me and a lot of his staff members and some of his players. Ahmad Nixon, for example.
Orion Stewart.
Orion Stewart, who had some funny comments on Twitter about Gary Patterson being hired. And, I mean, the social team's got to get a picture of that if Orion Stewart shows up to a practice and, daps up GP.
We need to get Orion on the show.
You talk about a hell-freezing over type of a moment. But, yeah, I mean, a lot of good stuff there. Obviously, a lot of the stuff that, like we talked about earlier with Ross's story, is a lot of very much influx topics of interest right now. And so there's nothing around the corner the NCAA tournament's expanding, but shoot, you blink and it's here all of a sudden. So a lot of interesting work being done behind the scenes on the playoff and the tourney and how all that's going to work and just the Big 12's approach as well. But, plenty of good stuff to pick through there with Mack and the Gary Patterson stuff might be the most interesting of all, certainly for Baylor fans, just because of the history there. But I'm not surprised to hear him say he talked with people because I think that's the smart move because you never really know how bitter it really could have been for especially power brokers. But I think even those folks who maybe hated him at one point in time, hey, you want to win? I mean, that's the name of the game, right? And so I think that a lot of that bad blood's gone to the wayside, and everybody's gotten older and grown up a bit, Patterson included, you would hope. And, they'll get back to just coaching football, and he'll be able to help out a guy who he obviously respects and who clearly respects him and Dave Aranda, and that's really what it all boils down to.
I also think that there is an element of spite here with Gary Patterson.
Spite against TCU?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure.
I mean, there's a little bit of.
I think you could have said Bryles still, and I would have been like, probably.
I mean, there's a little
TCU
bit
for sure. Yeah,
because but I do think he's an analyst. He's not going to be as involved as people would like to think.
Well,
I mean, like
he's left the door open there a little bit.
Yeah, but but analysts, it's different everywhere. But the analysts they're mostly locked away in a film room. That's what they do, and then they help with that. But yeah, we'll see where it goes. This is one of those things that's either it's going to work fantastically or it's just going to go away.
It's called fan hypocritical, and it's what fans do, and I've been this person before. Everyone, Cowboys fans hated Deion Sanders until he all of a sudden put a jersey on that was a Cowboys jersey. And that's the way it is with certain fans and players and athletes and coaches the same way. I did see that, some were like, God, like, ooh. And then again, but if he helps us win. Some on the chat room, some, of course, on social media. But
I don't blame anybody who's not happy about it. I don't blame you one bit if you don't like the idea, but ultimately Dave Aranda needs to win football games.
That's exactly right.
He doesn't care about the Bryles-Patterson feud from 10 years ago, because we also got to remember, guys, it's 2024.
Yeah.
Like, this was 2014, 15, 16 stuff that was going on. We're all much different people, I think, from back then. Everybody is, and at least we're older, that's for sure, greatly older. But, yeah, I think those who have a problem with it go win some games and it'll be A-okay. If they stink and Gary Patterson's on the staff, then people will really hate him at that point. But, I don't know.
Again, if it doesn't work and Baylor is 4-8, then you know what? Nobody has to worry about anything.
But you can't just sit there and think it's going to work without changing staff, without changing how you go about adding talent. Erica Creech, Dave needs his own peer support. So let's try it.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. He's got a guy who clearly he's still learning how to be a head coach in some ways, and obviously he did not do the right thing by being as hands-off with the defense as he appears to have been. And a lot of people wanted him to interject himself sooner than he did. He's doing that now. He learned that lesson. But it's like, how much time and how many lessons do you learn before it's like, all right, you had enough rope.
Yeah.
And so I think that, you know the writing's on the wall that they need to succeed. They need to get better as a program. And where are you, if you're trying to still be the head coach, but you're also going to have to be a de facto DC in some ways, who's somebody that could come in and help you with a lot of that stuff? I don't know. There's a better person out there than Gary Patterson to handle the day-to-day defensive game plan or just whatever it is that comes across his desk. I think there's a lot of stuff that Aranda will not have to worry about that they can go to Patterson or to Pallage or to whatever, but it does take a little bit off his plate, because I was wondering about the idea of how much he puts into the head coaching spot, but now having to do that are you stretching yourself too thin? And so I think that this is a move that helps prevent that to some extent.
His offensive coordinator has been a head coach, right? Yeah. And now his defensive analyst, senior assistant, whatever you call him, has been a head coach, and that can't hurt. Like Scotty B, I don't like him. In fact, I would say I hate him. But if Baylor starts off and they win early and the defense is playing better, whether it's Aranda or Patterson or a combination or whoever or Pallage, as long as it works, that's what you want. And I think that's Dave Aranda is one of the guys that doesn't even look at that outside noise, although last year he admitted that he heard it and knew it was there. All right, when we come back, it's a little bit later than normal. Craig Smoak off the radar, and this is 365 Sports.
Richard Carr, Buick GMC Cadillac, they are the people that you can count on, and they're the people that thousands of Central Texans and people beyond the Central Texas area have counted on for well over 2 decades now at this point, as they are celebrating 25 years, so quarter of a century in Waco this upcoming March, and the party is starting now with big anniversary sale savings. Right now they've got thousands off a variety of different vehicles, but how about today we focus in on the Buick Envision, ranked the #1 overall brand for new vehicle quality by J.D. Powers. Buick Envision offers just amazing luxury, but also great space, and all of that in a common car price. Right now you can save thousands on a Buick Envision, and qualified buyers can get 0.9% financing on Buick's top-rated SUVs, plus military and first responders can save an additional $500 as well. So that is for the new Buick Envision. Check out the luxury and the space at a common car price right now over at Richard Carr. But if you want to go into something a little bit more seasoned, or you're looking to get a new used car, or a used car in tip-top shape, I should say. They trade for the best over at Richard Carr, so they right now have a lot full of quality pre-owned cars and trucks in stock. 100 used cars and trucks to choose from, all inspected with a 172-point inspection, and all slapped with that Richard Carr seal of approval, plus a financing goal at Richard Carr that is 100% credit approval. They say yes when others say no. So whether it's the Buick Envision or their lot full of quality pre-owned cars and trucks, check out the business that's been in business for 25 years in Central Texas, run by proud Central Texans and proud Baylor Bears. Log on to richardcarr.com today. Call now or go see them now off Highway 6, the Imperial exit.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at AllianceBankTexas.com. Member FDIC and Equal Housing Lender.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
It was broad daylight. I stepped into a gas station for 5 minutes to grab a snack, and just like that, my car was broken into. They made out like a bandit. My laptop, my phone, everything. I called my agent to see what could be done, and he restored my faith in humanity. My claim was processed so quickly, and I was able to recover my losses.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McClain County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. See all the things they can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow at GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. Enjoying the show? Hit the like button and subscribe.
Well, welcome into 365 Sports. Back here out of the break, and time for a little off the radar as we take a look at some stories and grab bag of headlines from around the world of sports. And a little later than normal. Normally do this Tuesdays and Thursdays at around 4:45, but a a little bit later, so we'll roll into who do we have coming up? John McClain, I guess, down the pipeline. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to need a half hour. If I do, then good Lord. But let's start off with a little bit of TV ratings. I usually sprinkle these in when they're of interest, and certainly the biggest game in American sports taking place this past Sunday with big names, big brands, big celebrities in attendance. The Super Bowl rating is always something worth taking a look at, and especially this year as it was a record-setting year, as you've probably seen by now, in more ways than one, but especially when it came to the actual television rating itself. 123.4 million viewers on average across the full array of CBS sports platforms, the most watched telecast ever, with a total audience delivery of the average 123.4 million across platforms. As I mentioned, a large, nearly the entire chunk came from CBS proper, 120 million viewers, largest audience in history for a single network. I will say that again, largest audience in history for a single network. Folks, that was the most watched television program in American television history the other night as the Chiefs got the win and did so in dramatic fashion as Patrick Mahomes now has a third Lombardi trophy, as do most of his teammates and Andy Reid. Just the dynasties in the making, and where is this TV rating going to be in a couple of years from now if they keep up this pace and all of this keeps it going their way? But wow, 123.4 million average viewers, 120 million on CBS alone, largest audience ever for a single network in American television history. Elsewhere, you had it was the most streamed Super Bowl in history, and I don't think that's a surprise. I feel like that's something that every year from here on out we're going to break that record most likely, unless it's just a dud of a matchup. But the streaming thing is so in its infancy that appears like it will be broken on a regular basis. But not that 120 million number for CBS. More than 200 million people watched all or part of the Super Bowl across the various platforms, which was the highest unduplicated total audience in history, and all of that up 10% from last year's Super Bowl. So that was the rundown from the PR side of things from CBS, but they kept it kind of neat and tidy, which is why I use that. But wow, that's a big number, boys, and that was a big-time football game watched by a lot of people the other night.
How much was the national championship game? 22 million or something like that?
Yeah, something
so
like that.
So 10 times the number.
No, that's six times.
Yes, 6 times the number of that. That's how many million?
123 million.
123 million. 6 or 7 times the number of a college football national championship game. The power of the NFL.
Yeah, and the power of Taylor Swift, and all, and Usher, and all the different things that went into that. Yeah, it was. And look, it was a good game. It was longer than most of them too, so they got to probably reboot some of that ad time a little bit.
Got overtime, yeah.
Yeah, because of the absolute full length of overtime.
Yeah, you got as much. I was wondering, what do they do in that scenario? Because we've never really seen that.
Field. They switch to the other side of the field and continue on as it's the second quarter.
No, I'm talking about with commercials and stuff like that. Yeah, the broadcast.
Some guys got bonus money, man.
Yeah. No, I mean they're. That was, it was really unbelievable, and you knew it was going to happen. Now the NFL, the problem is the NFL is going to be really hoping that Taylor Swift is in all these things.
You're hoping there's a pregnant Taylor Swift there in a couple of years or something that you can put on TV, yeah.
Or that the second biggest pop star in the world starts dating an NFL player.
Mahomes' rival would be perfect. It could be Lamar Jackson or something like that. I don't know.
Josh Allen is dating an actress.
There you go. Josh Allen would be great.
He's dating an actress that was in Hawkeye. Haley Steinfeld, but she's not. I mean, again, I had to explain who she was. So,
unlike Taylor Swift,
he's already lost that battle as far as the fame goes. And she's very talented, but again, Taylor Swift.
Dude, we're talking about two completely different worlds. That all due respect to Haley Steinfeld, she is not anywhere close to the audience that Taylor Swift brings in. But yeah, I mean, if Beyonce was still single somehow and somebody of that caliber, then that would be kind of the comparison to make. But it was a perfect storm of the teams, the personalities, the celebrities, all of the storylines involved as well. And I did go back to double check. Michigan's title game win, the most watched title game in college football in 4 years, 25.05 million across all of the ESPN networks. And that was up like 40+% from the year prior because of the TCU Georgia blowout. But that absolutely is a drop in the bucket. Even though that's a huge number for college football, that's a drop in the bucket compared to what the NFL had on Sunday. So 200+ million viewers, and it was the it was the most watched game, not only in Super Bowl history, but the most watched telecast. That's the part that was crazy to me, was just the most watched telecast in Super Bowl history. So pretty amazing stuff there, and the party's still only getting started, it feels like, when it comes to Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs and the dynasty and everything that they can continue to create. But the game was in Las Vegas. That as a backdrop certainly added some flavor that otherwise we've never really had before as well. And that also was of note. ESPN.com put it out there. I don't so much care about the money side of things, but more than $185 million was bet on the Super Bowl with the Nevada sports books, most ever, according to unaudited figures per that ESPN article. The amount wagered eclipsed the previous high on the Super Bowl from 2 years ago by nearly $6 million. So I'm sure you guys saw a lot of that action during y'all's time there in the casinos and whatnot. I'm not sure what all. We haven't really unpacked y'all's trip very much, but what was Vegas like during the Super Bowl? We haven't even talked about that at all. Like none of the aspects of the game.
It's one of the cities that can host a Super Bowl. You knew it was there because all the billboards or whatever else, but it's a city that can host that event, and you may not know it. You really may not know it because downtown is so congested anyway, and the traffic around the Allegiant Stadium or even around the Strip. But you could have told me, other than the fact we were going inside the NFL media headquarters, the Super Bowl was going on. There's a lot of fans. Millions of fans, obviously. It seems
that's what I'm asking. Is like the atmosphere. I don't care about Radio Row and stuff.
I'm not even talking about it.
Wednesday when we were walking out.
When
we were walking out of Radio Row, the Super Bowl experience, like if you went from the front door of the Mandalay Bay Inn, and you walked through the casino and past the restaurants. And then if you went to the right, you were down to security where we had to go through every day. And if you went to the left, you kept going on to the fan experience. And the people that were going to the left, walking through that same hallway as us, was I've never seen anything like it at any Super Bowl. The absolute wave of people going to the experience. And I thought I want to say the last time we were in, not this time in Phoenix, but the last time in Phoenix was a lot because they were letting people into Radio Row as well. So there's kind of like a wave of human beings.
We didn't have to deal with that.
But it was just a ton of people
all of
just
them
rolling in.
Both teams.
I can only imagine. I mean, it's already packed, like you said, and you're right that they could have had any event going on, and you don't really tell from your typical Las Vegas. But, I mean, just massive amount of attention, massive numbers, and that big 123.7 across all platforms was higher than last year's mark, which is the previous best, 115.1 million for last year's Philadelphia and Kansas City game. That was also dramatic and also came down to the very end, but it didn't have some of the other elements. So anyways, the NFL remains king as always, and that's not going to change anytime soon. Meanwhile, couple of different notes. I don't normally dip into golf much, but did you watch much of the Phoenix Open? Did you have a chance to watch that?
I actually was turned off because I had seen so much on social media, my Twitter timeline, it being basically a massive fraternity party.
You mean the wasted management?
Yes, the waste management or wasted management.
Yeah, it might. I got enough, I guess, feedback on some highlights. I basically watched an hour of it throughout the entire 4 days.
I'm not a golf guy, but I do remember seeing a clip a couple years back, and that's how it got onto my radar. I think it was from like Barstool or something, and it was just a clip on Twitter, and it was a raucous crowd, and they were throwing beers in the air and having a good old time, and it seemed like a very lively event, but now it's gotten too lively. And so this past weekend, not a good one for the Waste Management Phoenix Open, as they have announced they will have some pretty major changes to the event next year. This past weekend, there was overcrowding, which contributed, and that was partly to do, they said, because of rain, so you kind of had to move people in certain areas where otherwise they'd have like open air to kind of maneuver around, but because of the rain and the course, you had to basically put everybody on the path, right? And so you suddenly had 100,000 plus people that are confined to a more or a smaller area, and that contributed to some of that. But they also had to halt alcohol sales. They also halted admissions on Saturday, and there was a lot of arguments back and forth between those in charge of the event, plus the golfers themselves and the fans that were in attendance. And so according to the group or the organization that hosts the Phoenix Open, the Thunderbirds, the executive director talked with the Golf Channel. He said they spent nearly 6 hours talking about the damage and about the changes that need to happen to put on a better event moving forward, saying, I think you'll see a complete operational change of how we manage our Friday, Saturday, but the entire week. Said they're proud of what they've built over the last few years on the PGA Tour and had the Tournament of the Year in 5 of the last 7 seasons, but they do not like what happened on Saturday, and the players especially don't like what happened on Saturday, but neither do the fans, so nothing is off the table when it comes to changes. And we did see a few golfers like Zach Johnson who said they'll probably need to do something about it. I'm assuming they're ashamed. It's been inappropriate and crossed the line since I've been on tour, and this is my 21st year. So there were a lot of comments like that, but you will see some changes to what is a very lively event otherwise, the Waste Management Phoenix Open.
They did that par 3 16th, and they turned it into what was kind of a fun atmosphere.
Arena kind of, yeah.
Then it became basically like a mini baseball stadium. And then, of course, they packed it, and they'd throw beers on the greens if somebody had a hole-in-one. Tiger did it one year. And Zach Johnson got mad because somebody kept popping off about the fact that he sucked as a Ryder Cup captain. And there was a video of him like, I'm just tired of it. I'm just tired of it. Well, the guy's being honest, you know. And then golf has had this etiquette. But etiquette these days is that line's being crossed across the board. You see fans fighting at stadiums, brawls. So this was just a matter of time.
Well, I think it was a situation where you had a really cool thing that you stumbled upon, and then you have like anything else. It's like when you have a great party and all of a sudden like those people show up, and then next thing you know, it's just going from like
somebody outdoes the other one.
Yeah, yep. Shots to like full-on nude body shots, and the next thing you know, the fire on the roof, and it's
Kim
just
Coulter, it was a disgrace. There was a guy in a freaking wedding dress and another in an effing thong, and nothing else. It became disgraceful.
There's a lot of craziness going on, and so they are addressing it per the people in charge of the Phoenix Open, and say there is change coming and nothing is off the table. So well done to the folks who ruined the party. I'd imagine that's not their first time, nor will be their last time ruining a party of some sort, but that was a cool event when they kind of were able to keep it in check. Meanwhile, one other golfer note, because I know this is of interest to both of you, but sometimes we cross over, we talk about sponsorship deals and various, apparel deals and things like that. Well, Tiger Woods, we know that he left Nike, but he has now announced what is coming down the pipeline as he is set to make his return to the PGA Tour this week in L.A. at the Genesis Invitational. But after leaving Nike, after spending his entire career with the swoosh, he is announcing the Sunday Red, three words, Sunday Red apparel line in conjunction with TaylorMade. That was announced yesterday in Los Angeles. It'll feature both apparel and footwear with a new Tiger logo that will be different than the old TW logo that he had with Nike, and it will officially launch on May the 1st. So it's kind of like The Rock's got all these things suddenly working in his favor. You're seeing like the PR campaigns, like Tiger's got his comeback, he's got the new apparel deal.
Yeah, playing in L.A. this
Playing
weekend.
in L.A., and so, there's more information to come, but Sunday Red, 3 words again, and more details to follow on that new apparel deal with TaylorMade and Tiger Woods.
He's been hitting TaylorMade irons now for like the last 6 or 7 years. He wears FootJoy shoes, although this particular company might be making shoes that he wears. The thing with Nike was weird. It just like disappeared.
Well, and
I'll tell you how much I know you were in trouble last night. I sent you and I both are his fan club president. You did not even respond to me sending you that about Tiger.
Well, his wife was watching Kansas get
listen, Tiger, this show and then everything else. And you,
yeah, I know he's probably disappointed in me. I would think he is. But
I will buy something as soon as it's available, even if it's too expensive.
Have y'all seen the logo?
Yeah,
it's awesome.
It's really unique. Obviously, it's a spread out kind of a vision of a tiger.
Yeah,
with just little type.
The Nike thing quit making sense, other than it was Nike, when they stopped having golf stuff.
Well, because others started having the same stuff that the Nike guys were supposed to have that were unique and exclusive, and they started seeing that with the other brands.
I mean, and look, it's like Phil Mickelson probably deserves a little bit of the credit in the souring of the Tiger Woods Nike relationship or the end of it, because years ago he was like, look, he's playing with substandard equipment because Phil didn't like the Nike stuff. And then Nike kind of took a beating on that, and
I think maybe Tiger went out the next time he played and beat the hell out of everybody.
Yeah, but even still, like Nike as a company, like, okay, well, there were, because at the time there was like Phil people and Tiger people, and if Phil people aren't going to buy Nike because Phil told them not to, that's a beating you're going to take. So now you've got Phil saying, like, the second best golfer in the world right then, saying that your stuff is no good, then eventually you just stop doing it. And then you have the best golfer of all time sitting there promoting your stuff, but he's really only promoting shirts and pants and not equipment. And, it just got to the point of, that's kind of...
That Tiger Nike, Dan, that's going to be hard. I got a bunch of that stuff. But I'll get
you
this
still
new
wear it. It's not off limits now.
I'll be throwback. I will be getting... I will get a hat. I'll get a golf shirt or two, and I'll be wearing it.
Well, it's a cool logo. It's definitely different, that's for sure. And so TaylorMade and Tiger Woods pairing up, and we'll see how all of that goes moving forward. But obviously, we've got a couple of folks here who are going to be a part of those initial buyers of whatever merchandise does come out. So, yeah, I hadn't talked much golf recently, but there was that. Also, elsewhere, I just found this interesting. This is very much an off-the-radar type thing, which we don't always get, but... did you see the Jackie Robinson statue got stolen from a youth baseball field, and they actually caught the person who was involved with stealing the Jackie Robinson statue off of a youth baseball field last month in Wichita, Kansas. Police announcing the arrest of a 45-year-old man, Ricky Angel Alderete, taken into custody on an unrelated case, was later charged in this case with felony theft valued at over $25,000, aggravated criminal damage to property, identity theft, and making false information. The reason for the theft, according to police and Yahoo and the Wichita Eagle, appears to be financial. So it wasn't anything nefarious like, racial motivated, like take down the Jackie Robinson statue or anything like that. So the investigation has not revealed any evidence indicating this was a hate-motivated crime. Instead, we believe this theft was motivated by the financial gain of scrapping common metal. So we got a scrap metal place right here, and you see some pickup beds where you're like, where did this stuff come from? Like, did you raid a house to get all of this stuff?
Thousands and thousands
Are there
of pounds.
possibly this many, dumpy old, broken-down buildings that you can peel stuff away from? I suppose there is. But going and grabbing the Jackie Robinson statue off the youth baseball field is like a whole nother attempt at trying to, make some money
especially
here.
if it's copper. If it was a copper statue, I don't know what it was made out of. But copper in particular pays off really well. As a matter of fact, Lipsitz, who is right across, that's the scrap metal company. I've been over there to take some things in the past, like an old refrigerator, a washing machine and dryer unit, which I had to do alone and damn near killed myself because nobody came with me. We loaded in the truck and they're like, all right, see you later. And I'm like, so then I went over there and they're like, yeah, we don't have anybody to help you. I had to shove this thing out of the truck myself. But they have restrictions on copper. Like if you have to come in with copper, you have to prove that you got it.
Radio station towers have copper in the ground for
bronze,
all of it. And I remember we used to always have that sometimes stolen from inside a security.
Yeah, I remember we had a really weird situation.
Barbed wire fence.
Where a guy had gotten into the gates and was taking stuff. But this was a bronze statue. It got cut from its base, and then the feet were the only thing that were sitting there at the youth baseball field, which is called, or the baseball league's called Youth 42, and which is named obviously after Jackie Robinson's number. But it was a bronze statue, and they had found it in a dump, like a trash dumpster, just pieces of the statue, and they were burned. So I don't know what. I think there's probably a lot of illegal drugs involved here, guys.
Yeah.
I'm just assuming this, but anyways, they found the guy involved with the dismantling and burning of the Jackie Robinson statue, and he is under arrest. But it sounds like they might also have some more arrests coming. Said that they're not done yet. Exactly. So you want off the radar. That was pretty off the radar, but glad that they could find some resolution there. And the statue will be replaced as once the destruction went public, they got a bunch of donations, and via some assistance from Major League Baseball and a GoFundMe, they raised close to $195,000, and the combined total from, I guess, both parties was about $300,000. So any extra funds after they replace the statue will go towards boosting League 42's programming facilities. They'll also have some surveillance cameras and increased lighting around the park. So smart investments there with that. All right, and I think that's about it because I know we got to run here, but I guess I'll make mention of this real quick. Mitch Trubisky was released yesterday by the Pittsburgh Steelers, excuse me. One of 3 cuts that the Steelers made, also along with an offensive lineman and a punter, and that was all to save some cap space. But now you'll have Mason Rudolph going to free agency. You got Kenny Pickett with the I guess the only spot now on the roster when it comes to quarterback. And Paul, I'll be curious what you think that the Steelers are looking at here. But you talk about one of the all-time, especially after this past weekend, like what did you do in NFL draft history? The Bears drafting Mitch Trubisky has got to be right there as like Sam Bowie and Michael Jordan, right?
Oh, my
it has
gosh.
to be because Mitchell Trubisky was the 2nd overall pick in that draft. The number 1 pick, do you guys remember?
Was it Jared Goff?
No, it was Myles Garrett.
Myles Garrett. Okay, that's a good one.
Yes, but Mitch Trubisky was the first player drafted off the board at the quarterback position, and you would go on to have a young man by the name of Patrick Mahomes, who was drafted at number 10, just a few spots behind. So just interesting timing there. Deshaun Watson was 12th overall. He's obviously been very up and down. But, Mitch Trubisky, now without a team, the former number 2 overall pick in the same draft as Patrick Mahomes, which, hey, a lot of teams obviously didn't know what was coming there. But, my gosh, especially after this weekend, that just feels even worse.
And, look, maybe I was biased. I remember at the time, I'm probably pretty biased because I'd seen Patrick play quite a bit. And, I never once thought, like, oh, this guy's going to be a disaster of an NFL quarterback. Like, I thought he's going to be really good, but he's got to wind up in the right spot. And look, we might not be talking about Patrick Mahomes and this greatness because he goes to the Bears because they've never had a great quarterback. But,
True.
My apologies to Sid Luckman, but he's dead, so I don't have to worry about him coming to find
Jim
me.
McMahon.
Yeah. That just really looks bad in retrospect. There's 2 people who look really bad, or 2 groups that look really bad. Cliff Kingsbury and his defensive staff at Texas Tech, and the Chicago Bears' entire organization every time that Patrick Mahomes puts another ring on his finger.
Well, 9 teams didn't draft him, right?
Yeah.
9 teams.
But they only one drafted a quarterback.
That's a good point. But it's one of those. It's crazy. And what a year. What a career.
What a miss.
Yeah,
what an absolute awful miss for that franchise. And like you said, Paul, I don't know if Patrick Mahomes goes and wins 3 Super Bowls at this point if he's playing in Chicago. Probably not because the Andy Reid connection. I think just the relationship he has with Kansas City, who's to say that would have been duplicated, obviously, either. But, that's just an interesting note because of the Super Bowl win by Mahomes, who now has 3. And, he was the 2nd quarterback taken, a few spots behind Trubisky, who now is looking for a new home. So we'll see how that goes. And the Steelers also needing to fill out their quarterback room. But there's a few things off the radar.
I want to add this one, an NFL note. This came down. Tom Pelissero, Craig, thank you. Nick Allegretti, an offensive lineman with the Chiefs, started Super Bowl 58 in place of All-Pro Joe Thuney. He played 79 snaps despite suffering a torn UCL in his elbow in the second quarter. Today, an MRI revealed the full tear. Allegretti now a 3-time Super Bowl champion and one tough son of a you-know-what.
In related news, I kind of twisted my ankle the other day when I was walking and had to sit down for 2 hours.
It's the worst, yeah. Only 2 hours? Man, you're a trooper.
Somebody, I forgot what it was, but somebody was talking about Taylor Swift had gone to Japan, came back, Super Bowl, all that. And then the woman on the Twitter feed goes, and I've been thinking about dusting my house for the last 2 weeks. keep pushing it up. All right, Craig.
I mean, I'd have more respect if she'd flown commercial from Japan. Now, that would have been really impressive given our airlines. But no, that was, quite the whirlwind, I'm
She
sure.
wasn't on Spirit. All right, when we come back, Hall of Famer John McClain, and this is 365 Sports. TexasBeefHouse.com in White House, Texas, and right outside of Tyler, where Patrick Mahomes, of course, played his high school football. They will have new information on the next beef auction, online and live, that will be in April. It has been such a success. They've added one and then another and then another, and now another one will be with all the details on TexasBeefHouse.com in April of this year. Premium quality beef from their pasture to your plate. TexasBeefHouse.com is absolutely just a spectacular product. The Duval family, no hormones, no antibiotics, no steroids, premium, aged, grade, East Texas beef, and you can get online, TexasBeefHouse.com, and order what you want. Steaks, sausage, tri-tip, brisket. You want it, they have it. TexasBeefHouse.com. Are you ready to elevate your Waco experience to a whole new level? Look no further than the Baylor Club, where you can indulge in one-of-a-kind luxury and unwind in our exclusive lounge area. Located in the heart of McClain Stadium, this elite club offers 5-star member atmosphere for all your work and play needs. With a master culinary team and outstanding hospitality, we take pampering to a whole new level. Weddings, milestones, businesses, and birthdays. A stadium roaring with Bear spirit featuring stunning city skyline views. The Baylor Club truly has it all. The Baylor Club is the destination for Baylor basketball pregame meals, beverages with this special membership offer. If you mention Sikkim 365 or 365 Sports Radio, just ask for John or Devin for details. For interest in membership or your next private event, call 254-710-8080 or Google Baylor Club Linktree for more information on menus, calendars, upcoming special events. Say yes to the Baylor Club today. 254-710-8080 or Google Baylor Club Linktree.
Cars priced right, day and night. Average your car in Texas. Trucks built for you, red, white, and blue. Average your car in Texas. Cars that zoom with lots of room. Average your car in Texas. Count on us, a dealer to trust. Average your car in Waco, Texas.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
In Texas, there's pea-size hail and baseball-size hail. Guess which one hit our house? We didn't even know where to begin, but we called our Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent, and he was so reassuring. He knew exactly what to do to get our house back into shape and our lives back to normal. Now, we're even more thankful for the roof over our heads.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Thank you for calling your local Marco's Pizza. We're turning up the heat with our new Reaper Cheesy Bread. Fresh, house-made dough is topped with a spicy cheese blend infused with jalapeno, habanero, and Carolina Reaper peppers. At only $5.99, this limited-time product is a hot deal. Add it to your order while you can. A Marco's team member will be with you shortly.
Marco's Pizza. Pizza lovers get it, and that offer on the Reaper Cheesy Bread is available right now at any of the 5 Marco's Pizza locations in Waco, including Belmead, China Spring, Robinson, Woodway, and Hewitt. Order online at marcos.com. Call for a pickup or delivery. Marco's Pizza is turning up the heat with their all-new Reaper Cheesy Bread with fresh, hot, house-made dough topped with a spicy cheese blend infused with jalapeno, habanero, and Carolina Reaper peppers, and only $5.99 and for a limited time only. Marco's Pizza, the fastest-growing pizza brand in America, 5 locations in Waco, and the new Reaper Cheesy Bread. Marco's Pizza. Pizza lovers get it.
Welcome back to 365 Sports. It's time for our weekly segment with NFL Hall of Fame columnist John McClain. Brought to you by Pioneer Steel and Pipe, where customer service is their main focus, and best in metal, steel, and pipe for large or small projects, with 2 locations in Waco and Bryan. Family owned and operated since 1943.
John McClain, the Hall of Famer, missed seeing him at the Super Bowl, but he's been to dozens of them, so it's not like he's missing it. But John, thanks for your time with Craig and Paul and Smokey. Your thoughts? I thought the 49ers had a couple of things go bad. The muff punt, which was just a fluky deal. But in the end, here we go with Kansas City and the so-called word of a dynasty.
And they are a dynasty, and they won by 3 points. The 49ers didn't lose that game. The Chiefs won it. And one of the reasons Kyle Shanahan took the ball first, and I got no problem with that, is his defense was gassed. They just had a 13-play drive. They were just worn out. They needed time. They still couldn't stop them. And McCaffrey's fumble, the flukish, as you mentioned, David on the punt, and they still lost by 3. And they lost to the best quarterback in the NFL, one who's one of the greatest in history. There's no shame in it. Disappointment, of course, but the 49ers have been in 2. Bud Grant lost 4. He's in the Hall of Fame. Marv Levy lost 4. He's in the Hall of Fame. There's a lot of coaches that lost 2 Super Bowls or championships who are still in the Hall of Fame, and Kyle Shanahan's going to be coaching another 20 or 30 years, so he's got a chance to win multiples.
John, the 49ers are up against it salary cap wise, and the trend is that the team who loses takes a huge step back the next year. We saw the Eagles do it this year, barely even made the playoffs and gotten throttled by the Bucs when they did. What do you see as the future of them, at least immediately, with their salary cap situation, which I think, according to Over the Cap right now, they have like $3 million?
The Eagles started off 10-1, and they lost both coordinators, and that hurt. And now they fired those coordinators this year because Jalen Hurts regressed. You know, they're 10-1. No Super Bowl team other than the Patriots, no loser has gone back the next year other than New England, going back to the 90s. And so there's a reason. You'd think that the Super Bowl loser would be the hungriest team in the NFL, but for whatever reason, they don't go back. That does not bode well for the 49ers. Maybe they'll be the first, other than the Patriots. Usually, to do that, you need a great quarterback. Brock Purdy is not yet a great quarterback. So I think the way you overcome when you're over the cap, they've got to be under the cap on the start of the league year in March. You get rid of players, you extend players to get their salary cap figure lower, and they'll be able to do that. Now, they're going to lose some players. They got a couple of those defensive linemen like Chase Young, Randy Gregory. They knew they were rentals. They've got too much money tied up into their defensive line to re-sign anybody, and guys are not going to take hometown discounts. So their team will look different, but they have most of their big playmakers still under contract. Then you got to figure with Shanahan calling the plays and Brock Purdy going into his 3rd season, he should improve the way he improved this year on his rookie season.
John, the Patrick Mahomes love is all over the place. You don't have to look forward to see people praising him and talking about just how great he already is and obviously how great he can be. Usually it's the media that starts to turn the page really quickly, but you had Travis Kelce there in the postgame already talking about wanting to go grab the 3-peat next year. Can you just kind of make sense of the Chiefs, but to a more specific extent, the greatness that you see from Patrick Mahomes with yet another Super Bowl, given all of the great players you've seen over the decades?
Craig, 8 teams have had a chance to three-peat. None of them even reach the Super Bowl the next year. That doesn't bode well for the Chiefs, just like it doesn't bode well for the 49ers next season to go back to the Super Bowl. As far as Mahomes, if he retired today, he'd still be a first-ballot member of the Pro Football Hall of Fame because of his achievements. You know, great quarterbacks like him and Brady, players come and go, but they're constant. They have great coaches, and they still win. Tyreek Hill was traded. They've won 2 Super Bowls they've changed their offense. And I saw a list of the players that they turned the Tyreek Hill trade into. It's amazing how well they've done. That's the thing. If you're going to get rid of your star players for draft choices, you have to cash in. And so I think Mahomes, he's a lot of people are trying to say he's better than Brady. Give me a break. Brady won 7 Super Bowls, including one with the second team. He beat Mahomes in the only one they've gone to, but Mahomes is in the conversation right now to be in the second best in history, and he's got plenty of time at his age to catch Brady, maybe even pass him, and then Brady, the mantle would be passed to him as the greatest of all time.
In fact, we had Todd Lebo on from sports radio in Kansas City, that when he's talked to Mahomes before, what has driven him crazy, not that he hates losing, but he lost to Brady in that game in Tampa. I was there for that one, head-to-head. That's like a 2-point swing. And then he also lost to Brady in a playoff game that led to, I think, Brady winning another Super Bowl. And so and Brady went a decade. Remember the frustrations, and then the Giants. 9 years and still won 7. That's hard to imagine that you could have that kind of a gap and yet have that kind of a lead over everybody else who's ever played the game.
Well, that's because he played longer than anybody. If he just played till he was 37 or 38, he wouldn't have had all that hardware. And maybe Mahomes will be able to play. He's been able, like Brady. Brady missed one season. He blew out his knee in the first game. They still went 11-5 with Matt Castle, didn't make the playoffs. And everybody said, that shows you what a great coach Bill Belichick is. And that's what people thought at the time. And he is great, of course, but he hasn't been good without Brady. And Mahomes at some point is probably going to have to play without Andy Reid. People are saying, well, Andy was one of the greatest coaches in history. Yes, he has been since he got Mahomes. Before that, he was a really good coach who had issues with clock management and game management and got criticized for it. Then he makes one of the greatest trades in NFL history, and now he's a genius. And plus, he's just gotten better as an offensive coach, and he's smart enough to give Steve Spagnuolo for his defensive coordinator. Spags is tied all time for most Super Bowls as his defensive coordinator with Dick LeBeau. And I don't think he'll ever be a head coach again. A lot of people are saying now, oh, he needs to be a head coach again. No, some guys are just better as coordinators, and now they pay those guys several million a year. Somehow they're able to survive.
John, what is your best guess on what happens with Chris Jones?
I think, he had the long holdout. He was fined several $1 million. He made jokes about what he had to win the Super Bowl to make up for some of the money he lost. It's interesting. He was great in this Super Bowl. He hadn't done squat in their other Super Bowls. I saw a list of his stats, and he was goose eggs. And now he played a huge role. He's up for more money. I can't imagine they're going to let him get away. And I don't think he'll get the kind of money he's hoping to get from another team. And I hope that for the Chiefs' sake, he stays because he fits perfectly in that defense.
How quickly do you think the Texans, with their salary cap move and the fact that they've got C.J. Stroud, can make a move and be at least one round better next year?
Well, first of all, the problem they've always had here, they have never hosted a divisional playoff game. They won a lot of wild card games, but they go on the road and they've lost every divisional game. We have not had a team in AFC championship game since the 79 Oilers went to Pittsburgh and lost the second consecutive game, one step shy of the Super Bowl. So the key is to play at home and not on the road. And they've got to add some more talent. They've got like 68 million people here. Oh, my God, they're going to sign Chris Jones. They're going to sign all these stuff. No, they're not. They may have the fourth most money available, but that's not a lot. That's not the MO that Nick Caserio has shown. But what they did last offseason with the draft and free agency bodes well. They got like 36 guys on expiring contracts, and I'm guessing they want back maybe 10 or 12, and some of those would be cheap because they're not going anywhere. But the key is you got to stay healthy and you got to play the game at home. Had they not blown road games to Atlanta and Carolina on field goals with no time left on the clock, they would have had 12 victories and they would have gotten a game at home. But, you live and you learn. Next year they're playing a first place schedule that is going to be murderer's row. But if you're going to be good, you got to step up and deal with it.
John, the Pro Football Hall of Fame class of 2024 announced Dwight Freeney, Devin Hester, Andre Johnson, Julius Peppers, Patrick Willis, then also Randy Gradishar and Steve Mongo McMichael from the seniors committee side of things. Your thoughts on the class of 24, knowing you have an instrumental role there and obviously even a bit more locally and personal there with Andre Johnson getting the call as well?
Yeah, I'm on the regular committee. I'm on the seniors committee. I presented Andre to our committee the way I did Chuck Alley last year. And I tell you, it's an enormous responsibility. And when you don't get a guy in who you present, it's so frustrating. And especially a guy like Andre Johnson, no Texan, his first Texan superstar. He comes so close his first 2 years of eligibility. There was a log jam with Reggie Wayne and Torrey Holt. This year I changed up my presentation a little bit. When I finished my 5-minute presentation, others spoke up on his behalf. And so I was so glad because I know what a Hall of Famer looks like. And I covered all of his practices, games, saw him on the field, off the field, in the locker room. He is the personification of everything you want. I'm so happy for him. Such a class act, not like a lot of wide receivers that pour gasoline on themselves and light a match to get attention. He was quiet. And I was at his house. I wrote a behind-the-scenes story that is the longest story I've ever written about the knock on the door of his house. And it ran on the Texans website, HoustonTexans.com. It's one of the best things I ever wrote. And the reason is because I was the only media person there. And I was allowed because I'm on the selection committee. And I presented him, and it's on their website, HoustonTexans.com, and there's no paywall. And I took so much pride in being able to present him and watch him be shocked when the door of his house opened and his mama started screaming and Chris Carter standing there in his gold jacket welcoming Andre to the Hall of Fame while he cried, and he was so numb and in shock he doesn't remember a word Chris Carter told him.
I do, if you don't mind, Paul, Steve McMichael, I watched the feature on him. He's got ALS. An unbelievable story and what it meant, his wife right there by his side. That's incredibly powerful and very sad and yet also heartwarming.
Well, I'll tell you this, we didn't put him in there because he had ALS. It wasn't even mentioned. We put him in there because he deserved it. Of course, we're all aware of it. We've seen so many stories, and his wife has been really outspoken, but that had nothing to do with anything. Bam Bam deserved it. He was very underrated on one of the greatest defenses in history, and I'm glad that he was able to know, unlike Chuck Alley, who has Alzheimer's and still may not know that he was in the Hall of Fame, but I'm glad Steve McMichael was able to know he's been voted into the Hall of Fame.
John, I'm going to throw out some other names from the 2001 Miami Hurricanes roster, which Andre Johnson was a part of that, maybe the best college football roster ever, arguably. So he's the first Hall of Famer out of that roster. Ed Reed is going to be a Hall of Famer, correct?
No, Ed's already in the Hall of Fame.
Ed's already in. Sorry, he's the second. I'm sorry. That's right. Ed's already in. So Andre's the second Hall of Famer out of that. Vince Wilfork, will he get in?
I believe Vince will get in, yes. He got multiple Super Bowl rings.
Yeah. Jeremy Shockey, will he get in?
I don't think his name's never come up.
Okay. And Bryant McKinney, will he ever get in?
Yeah, his name's never come up either.
Okay. Those are the ones who were, like, again, right there on the cusp. They were really good players, but 3 Hall of Famers from that one college football team. Frank Gore.
I think Frank Gore will get in strictly because he played so long. He's like third in rushing. But, boy, I don't think he'll get in on the first ballot. But no. I do think he'll get in because of longevity.
Yeah, the compilation of all the stats accumulating what he did over the years. Maybe at some point a Veterans Committee type of deal, too.
And Sean Taylor probably would have gotten in.
Oh, my God, yeah.
Based on
Sean Taylor was one of the all-time best. If he hadn't been shot to death, he definitely would have been in.
John, anything else, Paul?
Nope.
Thank you, John. Appreciate your time. Hall of Fame
I got
yourself.
I got one more thing.
Second. There we go. John McClain, Hall of Fame columnist with us on Tuesdays here on 365 Sports. Time for Paul and the top 5.
It's time for Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Texas Beef House. Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house when you order from Texas Beef House. Unleash the flavor of Texas-raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Top 5 thoughts about mostly Ross Dellinger's article, but the Big Ten SEC venture. To kind of wrap it up, this is what we started the show with today, and to bookend it on this. Number 5, my one concern about it, and it's not to maybe be concerned about right now, but it is long-term, that there's no other voices in the room. You've got the Big Ten and the SEC talking about how they can help everybody else. That just makes me nervous when it comes overall, because at the end of it, how much do you really want to help them, or how is this, right now they serve the purpose of helping the Big Ten and SEC, but how much of this is also to have plan B for when they no longer serve their purpose? That's what scares me about it.
Yeah, I can understand that. I think it goes back to there's not really anything you can do about it.
Yeah.
And so
that's a hell of a way to have to live life. But you're exactly right.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
It's true, though. I mean, you can't force anything if you're Phillips or Yormark or much less anybody else. I mean, if they're not going to listen to those guys, they're not going to listen to the American Conference or the Southland or any other conference that you want to throw out there. Those commissioners certainly aren't going to sway any opinions. So that's something that I think concerns a lot of ACC fans who don't have teams that are automatically going to get a spot, or in our minds would automatically get a spot, which is really automatically. Like I saw NC State's a lock because of the government of North Carolina, and I'm like, I would like to see that before that actually happens, because I don't think the SEC is going to be like, well, all right, I guess we'll take NC State to get. I don't know. I think that they'd be a little bit more selective. But
that's what they say today.
That's what they say today. Yeah,
when they have to say it, or
right.
when they're pushed into a situation of you make up your mind or not.
All rules are off. All bets and rules are off if they get to that point where they take it to the next level.
Yeah, so there's just a lot of talk still going on about what all this is actually going to look like. But I mean, it's very clear those two are on a path of their own making and choosing, and there's a lot of people that are following behind them, and you just hope that the light, the flashlight, the torch, whatever that's leading the way stays within reach, and it's not suddenly fading out and you're in complete darkness because they've left you behind. And that's what I think everybody's fear is. But yeah, I mean, those are the two most powerful voices. And you hope that Phillips and Yormark can have their say as well. Based on the article, it appears they are to some extent, but they're also basically saying, what can we do about it? And acknowledging that the SEC and the Big Ten are going to go and do what they're going to do. And there's not really much anybody can do to stop them.
But at the same time, NC State won't be left out if Vanderbilt, with all due respect, and others are included in that next move.
Yeah, no, I think that's more of a conversation I came across where it was somebody basically guaranteeing that NC State would be in the SEC if they got North Carolina, and I'm like, I don't know. Yeah. I think if you're the SEC, especially, not so much the Big Ten, top to bottom, SEC has way better teams. Mm-hmm. Top wise, you can have a bit of more of a comparison, but top to bottom, I don't think it's even close. And so you add Oklahoma and Texas. The last thing I think you want to do is just start adding people to add people because of state allegiances and things like that. I mean, I get the whole Virginia and you want the geography, but NC State, all due respect, don't get me wrong, but I don't know.
You're just looking at it realistically.
Yeah.
Well, look,
when you have Rutgers and Maryland, you're not going to have NC State, but at the same time, not just because.
This is not going to be about geography and TV sets anymore, potential TV sets.
To some extent,
as much as it is going to be about proven TV sets. The teams that have the ratings that are unflappable up and down.
Which I think is what the SEC kind of has. Yeah. And I granted, you could say NC State would bring that, or anybody like them. They're not just on an island by themselves, but Like Virginia Tech would be in the same conversation. But I do think that the SEC just seems to me to be smart enough to understand that the limited membership is what makes it elite and makes it seem as strong as it is.
Don't water it down, even if you bring in some pretty good names and logos.
Yeah, if you bring in Florida State and Clemson, you're still watering it down because, again, you're like, somebody's going to lose, right?
Especially if Florida State's such a loud, barking little.
But I mean, like, even if you bring in two premier brands that have won multiple national titles, you're watering it down because eventually it's either going to hurt the two you brought in or somebody that was always good.
Yep.
But that's in our frame of reference as it pertains to the way it is right now. What would that look like if there's a whole new model that they're playing around with?
Maybe
we don't know.
But number 4, they will want an expanded basketball tournament, which I just hate. I hate it.
Used to be 16, then 32, and 68.
64 was fine. I was okay with 68. Like, that's fine. That gives you like a little amuse-bouche before the thing. But
I'd like to know of the 4 additional schools since they started 68, how many of them are from a Power 5 autonomy conference?
It's happening more and more because they did.
Is that what we're talking about with the 12 in football?
Instead of doing with the 4 16s, now there's a 12 seed, and you have those other things. So
let's give Virginia Tech or whoever another chance to enter the tournament.
They've made that better, like for sure. Because when it was the 4, like the battle to see who loses to Duke, that's what it was for the longest time. But I think it's good right now. Just try to enhance the product that you have. Like, again, this is like walking out Sydney Sweeney and being like, she'd be better if we gave her a facelift. No, she's not.
Yeah.
She's fine.
Well, if her eyes were green, then she'd really be a 10. I don't know. Yeah.
No, just let it be.
For all I know, she has green eyes. I really don't even know. I'm just throwing that out there.
Those could be evil looking or beautiful. Either way,
So, that just don't change it. Just enhance it. Make it better. Make it more accessible, whatever you want to do. Make sure more people go. Because I've been to a ton of NCAA tournament games, and sometimes you've got it where you're thinking, this is the NCAA tournament. This room should be packed, and I'm looking around like I could sit anywhere I wanted to.
Yep.
She has blue eyes. What it's worth. I just double checked on that. I want to be factual on this program, but I'm not in favor of this. I'm also not the biggest college basketball fan in the world, so this isn't like, oh my gosh, like my world's erupting. But as somebody who does love the tournament and loves that time of year, I'm not real excited about a bunch of teams who are then starting to hang around like the 500 line. I mean, like, how deep does it go, and how much do you water down the regular season, which you've already started to do in college football? How much does that come into play if you're suddenly opening the door to? I mean, a lot of it would depend on how many teams are we talking about. Because if you're saying it's like another 4 play-in type of games, and there's not even double-digit new teams, I don't know how it all would work. Because in our heads, we go, well, 64, you got to keep it even. Well, it'd be 128. There's no chance it's 128 teams.
If it's 128, then you're going to look at, like, it's going to be like the NBA regular season where you're like, oh, why are 4 of the 5 starters sitting tonight?
Yeah. So I don't know what that'll look like, but I'm not real thrilled about the idea of an expanded basketball tourney. I think they've got a sweet spot right now.
Somebody just put in the chat, and I know we're running late. Is North Carolina the only state in the South without a member of the SEC, without a team in the SEC?
No, Virginia.
Well, that's true. That's right. Yeah. Yep. Right there next to them. Right there above them. Yeah.
Number 3. No reason to worry about a break off yet. Right now, they serve the purpose like it is. The commissioners say they're not worried. If I'm Jim Phillips, I'd be worried about everything. Like, when I wake up in the morning, I'd be like, what is happening to my life? Especially given how the last couple of months have gone for him. And the fact that he was duped into the alliance with George Kliavkov. And the only difference between him and George Kliavkov is his conference is currently still together and he has a job.
Well, and as of about an hour ago, George Kliavkov doesn't even have a conference, or it's
it's starting. He still has and Phillips still has a job, and Kliavkov is done. So I'm going to reiterate this point. Like, I just worry that there's we're going to work on how to fix it for everybody right now, but we're going to have a secondary group that works on the nuclear option. And then that one sounds better when you don't have another voice in the room saying like, whoa, guys, let's not do the nuclear option. Like let's not push the button yet. Because when you don't have somebody advocating for the Big 12, the ACC, and I'm not even mentioning everybody else, but those two other conferences, like it's going to be hard to like, at the end of the day, sometimes you get in an echo chamber and you make bad ideas.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's realistic to worry and wonder quite a bit about what all this is going to look like, but it very much could be a big nothing bomb when it's all said and done. It could be basically what it is now, and just you're seeing more money from the playoff go to a specific conference versus the way it is right now, and maybe more noticeable changes. But the fear, let's just face what the fear is. The fear is those two basically take their footballs and go and do the NFL, is NFL 2.0 or NFL Light or whatever. That's the fear. I don't think anybody worries as much about basketball, that side of things, because you understand there's a lot of programs that you couldn't necessarily, like right now, I know North Carolina, everybody's assuming they're moving somewhere, but right now they're in the ACC. You know, right now Kansas is in the Big 12. You're not having a tournament without programs like that, or Duke, or so on and so forth. So that's not as much of a concern, but the football side, I mean, yeah, with all the craziness going on and the whole House versus NCAA, that needs to get sorted out. Paying players needs to get sorted out. Is that in-house? How does that work? Who's going to be able to do that? So, yeah, there's a lot on the table, but I don't think it's as simple as they can just flip a switch this week and say, all right, we're leaving. There's a lot that they have to sort through and get fixed up to want to go or to be able to go and make a move like that.
Number 2. Your Mark going all in on basketball. This is something we knew, but we kind of even heard more about it today. And look, if you can't enhance football to a certain point, like you've maybe hit the wall or where you can be with football, basketball's probably underserved in that regard, about pushing it and like really pushing what this conference is going to be, especially once you add Arizona to it. And Arizona State's not a bad program either. They've been good, year over year. Utah's had a really good history, when it comes to that. Colorado, it's fine. They're an okay basketball program, but Arizona's a legacy program. They're absolutely one of those teams that's good. So you got to promote that all you want, but it is interesting to see like how much this will work, because
if you're going to go into a fight, you go in with your best part of your weaponry, and right now it's the college basketball for the Big 12. That's their nuts and bolts, and there's no reason to not bang that drum.
Yeah, I mean, they've leaned into it. They've had success winning national titles, and that's what you want to see is winning those big championships. Not to the extent of the SEC stranglehold in football, that for the most part obviously didn't win it this year, but the Big 12 has an opportunity to create something similar, keyword being similar, not exactly like that run-up dominance, but similar, and it's a great basketball league. So yeah, you lean into your strengths, and to think that you're going to go to the table and act like you're the same in football, even if the brands are fine and good and the games are fine and good and great sometimes, and the chase for the championship is good and all that, it's still, you can't create like 100 years of history. You can't make Iowa State have 20,000 more fans every Saturday than they have, or Baylor have 80,000 people in there. It's just not realistic.
You are who you are.
You are who you are in football, and every once in a while a TCU is going to jump up and make some noise, but for the most part, where you can do your most damage above everybody else is on the hardwood. And so, yeah, that just is logical to lean into basketball and have that be your leading strength there.
Number 1, the ACC appears to be unprepared for the future. Every time I hear Jim Phillips talk, and maybe it's just he's trying to deflect, but every time I hear him talk, it feels a little Kleov coffee. It just does.
Kleov coffee.
Yeah, just a little Kleov-esque, if you want to. But you've got a team that wants to leave. You probably have more than that are hoping that this gets worked out so they don't have to pay their lawyers. They can just go, here you go. You've got these two conferences that are, excluding you in this plan. You've already been duped once. You got screwed in the playoff because you didn't do anything. Not just because of that, but you didn't do anything and got caught flat-footed there. I just don't know if they're ready for the tidal wave that's coming.
Hey, man, they added SMU and Cal and Stanford.
Yeah.
They're going to be fine. No, I mean, I get that. I think you're also, and I would be this way too, but a little wishful thinking that the ACC is on rougher terrain than they are, but it does appear like they're on a pretty rocky road right now. I do think, though, that Florida State fans like yourself hope that that's the case, but it does appear to be the case. I don't know how rocky, though, because we've got to see how this lawsuit continues to play out and how the negotiations continue to go there. If we look up in a couple of months and Florida State's agreed to an arrangement where they're going to pay $50 million to get out of the ACC, then, yeah, they're screwed, man, for all intents and purposes. So you would hope that this isn't the case, but I can understand the hesitancy just because of the way dominoes have sort of fallen and how they've had the wool pulled over their eyes a couple of times now. And now there's no pulling wool. I mean, their teams are saying, we want to leave. Like, one team is saying, we want to leave. Others are saying, yeah, we wouldn't mind that either. I don't know how unprepared they are, but it's very uneasy in ACC territory right now for sure.
No question.
Even with a big, nice, long contract, as we know, that's getting pecked at this very moment, 24/7. Lawyers are looking into that thing, trying to crack the secret code there.
It's not only that; it's probably past correspondence between everybody.
Yeah.
And
during the negotiation process,
nothing changes. It seems like from 3 months ago, or 6 months ago, or 9 months ago, other than just more and more. Yeah, the ACC, he does feel like it's a little bit of the Pac-12, but at least they have some ammunition. But so did the Pac-12 until they didn't.
Well, I mean, the ACC has a TV deal, but then again, that's being pecked at right now, trying to figure out a way out of it. But the Pac was in a much more dire situation, and they just refused to really acknowledge that or believe that was the case, and we saw how that happened. So hopefully Jim Phillips isn't that foolish. But then again, he doesn't have a TV deal that's running out for another decade. So
trust no one.
Yeah, they're okay there, but yeah, I wouldn't be all 100% trusting anybody in any sort of an alliance.
Would
if I
love
was
to get
Jim
the text
Phillips.
between he and Yormark. Because I think Yormark might calm him down and say, we got this. And then again, who knows? All right. Thank you, Paul. Appreciate that. Thanks to all of you in the chat today. Valentine's Day tomorrow. We'll be back on Paul's triple option at 1, and we're back on again live as always at 3 as well. Garrett Ross, great stuff, weaving through a lot of different stories again. Jack McKenzie, Emery Winters already working on 365 Sports tonight at 10:30 on the CW. Mack Rhoades, John McClain, and Jared Sandler will be a part of that. Thanks to our sponsors every single day that allow us to do what we do, and we appreciate that. Paul Catalina, Craig Smoak, I'm David Smoak. Thank you. Back again tomorrow. Have a great night. 365 Sports.